Diane, would you lead us in the pledge today?
I'd love to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Welcome to summer, everybody. Microphone. I just want to remind everybody to use their microphones when they speak, including me. Just wave at me, Will, if I forget to turn my microphone on, okay? I don't trust Scotty. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, and I just want to comment that this is a summary of our discussions. Are there any corrections?
I would note that it says board, or Chair Isaac in a couple places, when it should be Chair Corrigan.
Well, Heather pointed out today too that I missed something on my place. Look, it's in place, but I gotta update mine.
I know, details.
I thought it was doing muscle memory.
Yeah.
That too.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved with, noted changes.
Thank you, Lance.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Oh, gosh, I guess I'm up right away. Fun. So this summer, probably about a month or so ago, MTSBA had their annual meeting, and they talked about what a successful school board looks like. And I think there are some things that it's important for us to look at. Are you gonna click for me? Oh. Do I have to dance too?
You don't have to, but it's.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is a volunteer job, sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to start, reminding us what our job is as board members, as opposed to what staff's job is, and, you know, the building level jobs. And it's kind of exciting for us, because we have some new things. I know you hear me talk about that all the time. But the first thing to keep in mind is that successful school boards have the high-level visionary discussions. You know, we're at that 30,000 feet, and we're setting the direction of the district.
Too fast?
No, they can read that, okay? I'm not gonna read every word on it, okay?
You just give me the look and
I'll give you the look.
give me the look.
The second thing is, after we set those lofty goals, the direction, is to provide the resources for it. This, you know, we work very closely with the administration on this, but that is one of our main jobs. And we hire, you know, visionary people, you know, to put our vision into place. We provide oversight. That's why we spend 3 hours at Finance Committee looking at where the money is going, where it should be going. We monitor our strategic plan, which I'm really excited about, that we'll get going in the fall. Monitor programs and services. That doesn't mean we run them. That doesn't mean we, you know, micromanage them. We monitor them. Legal and moral oversight. Is it the right thing to do? Now, we're not lawyers, so we can listen to some, but we have morals, and we can, you know, bring that to the board. And we evaluate the superintendent and ourselves. Okay, that's what we do. Now, this legislative session, it was pretty interesting. At first, I was a little worried, but, you know, it turned out okay. One of the big things was House Bill 246, which generally revises education laws and strengthens the supervision and control of local school boards. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have happened in the legislative session, but they did really strengthen our ability for supervision and control.
Sue?
Yeah.
What does it mean where it says increased opportunities for pupils? What is that exactly?
Actually, it will probably explain it in this next one. Opportunities for pupils, they've kind of redefined what a pupil is and what a teacher is. For instance, a student could be on a work-study program and be supervised by a teacher, not in a classroom,
All right,
okay?
I see that.
So, yeah, good question. And I think if you read through that, which I know you got a copy of that, so I'm not gonna read it to you. The big thing, and I just want to say that this election cycle, and probably every one of you who ran this time, it really helped me focus on what my role as a school board member is and what was important to me, what was my value. And student learning should be our focus. Okay? And, you know, we maintain that partnership. I didn't give you the look, Emily. We maintain that partnership, see? With the superintendent, still focused on student learning. Every decision we make, we should be able to take back to how it affects student learning. We also have to be flexible and responsive to student needs. I think we've seen a lot of student needs this last year. Some new things that have come up. Mental health issues have been, forefront lately. So we have to be flexible with that. And we know we have the capability to do that. And alternative learning opportunities should become part of the DNA of our district. It should just be something we do naturally. Coming from a special ed background, we deal with the individuality of every pupil. And I think that's starting to filter into all our students, which is really a nice thing to see. There's a look. The successful district will demonstrate so much value in public schools that no one perceives an advantage to migrating to non-public alternatives. I mean, we should have the gold standard here, and that is what we should strive for. We should also support dedicated and courageous superintendents and other school staff focused on advancing student learning and protect them from politically inspired assaults by extremists on any side of the spectrum. We have to work with everybody as a school board. We listen to everybody in the community. And we also have thick skin. I mean, when we listen to people in the community, we might not agree with them all, but we have to listen. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind, and we need to let our staff do their job. We need to recognize school staff when they show the energy and the commitment to take advantage of these opportunities and the trends that we've been presented with. Innovation, it's exciting. And we have to employ techniques of civil, informed discussion about complex issues. I don't agree with Scotty all the time, but we can still have a good conversation. And that's what we need to be able to do with everybody. Sorry, I called you Scotty.
That's all right. Don't call me that.
Can I put that in the minutes?
We're never going to go back to to where we were pre-pandemic, and we have to give up on that. We're going to keep the good things that we learned from this pandemic and how we did things different, innovation. Okay, we should value and reward the staff who shift their mindset to build on these successes. We really don't want to move backwards. We want to move forward. She's getting good, isn't she? To thrive post-pandemic. I took a long look at what inspires me and what I would like to do this year. What inspires me is respect and honor. That doesn't mean agreement. Jack and I, maybe 50% of the time agree, but I respect his opinion. I honor, what he brings to the table. Strategic planning, I think, is very important to set our core values. That gyroscope theory, what do we keep? What can we keep moving and change? Collaboration. It's crucial. We're not experts on everything. A few things maybe, but not everything. So we need to collaborate with people. We need to create an inviting environment for people. Okay. It might be nervous for people to sit out here and come and talk to the board. We need to make it inviting. Believe me, you guys are pretty intimidating. And community relationships. This is my big thing for this year. Kelly, go ahead and switch it. You should like this one, Scotty. Look closely. Okay, what inspires you to support public education? Think about that. This is a picture of me when I took our biology class up to Avalanche Lake. It's the students that inspire me, and I hope it's students that inspire you too. Go ahead and click it. Yeah. Community relationships. I would like to strengthen our relationship with our local community this year. We've just come through a year like no other, and I believe this is a good time to reset the dial. We need to promote a positive public image, be willing to work with all sides. I would like to start some community forums and encourage meetings with our partner districts. I know Will, Heather, Jack, and
The missing trustee.
who's our last one? Oh, and Mark. Yeah. You represent those partner districts. And Jack, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do to keep in touch with your...
Yeah, so I represent Evergreen and Helena Flats, and every 3, 4, 5 months, I am at the Helena Flats School Board meeting or the Evergreen School Board meeting. Spend about 20 to 30 minutes talking about things that have happened or going on or anticipating, and asking. The primary question is, how are things going in the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, when they go to Glacier and or Flathead. And typically there's always positive comments. When it comes to the levy time of year, everybody's protective, and I tell them what we're doing, and they go, oh no, something to that effect, because we're all competing for the tax dollar. And it's a struggle because we're all autonomous, and we all need money. And so, but we still have good conversations. They're aware of it, so it's, hopefully there aren't any surprises. So I have a good open dialogue with them all the time. But I do that. It depends on the number of topics and things that are going up, and if I remember and don't forget to attend a meeting. But it's every 3 or 4 months that I'll attend and talk to them about it. It's not a requirement. You're voted from that area, but you're not necessarily, associated with one school district or another, but because of the way it was set up, it just made sense for me to initiate a dialogue with them. There might have been times early on, many years ago, that I would share some of the comments with, Glacier High School or anything that might come up if it was low ag related, but there wasn't very many of that at all, and it's like, well, talk to this person, talk to this person. If you're not getting positive vibes, let me know and we'll see what we can do about it. But to me, it sounds like we've got a good connection between for the transition of 8th grade to 9th grade there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. So I really do encourage those of you from the partner districts to just touch base with, those local school boards. And I would like to start us having some community forums. I know I've talked about this with some of you, and I just want to strengthen our relationship with the community. Community relationships for the board is different than community relations with the staff. And we need to strengthen that right now. We've had a very divisive year, and that is no longer, okay? We're working hard to be one community, but I think we need to get out there and develop that relationship. So what I would like to do is start some community forums. I don't have all the details in there, but I know Missoula is doing a similar thing, and so I have a call into the chair of their school board about how they are doing things. And we can talk about it at the strategic planning, but I would like to do it 3 times a year. Just invite community members in a comfortable setting to just talk. We can have a short program if there's some interesting or crucial thing that we should be sharing with the community. We can do that, but it's a listening session. It's building that relationship. So when we have a difficult ask to make, like building a new school and redistricting school boundaries, it's much easier to ask if you have a relationship with people. So I want to start building that again. We'll probably be asking a few of you for help in doing this, but I would like to even start it as soon as September, when school first gets started. But it is a work in progress. And, okay, I want you to start thinking the gyroscope theory in preparation for strategic planning. Okay? Think about the core versus the non-core. What's important? What should never change? What is truly non-negotiable? What we want to keep as continuity versus those things that are not core, things that we can change and should change. What is negotiable and what do we want to change? Think about those things for strategic planning. And lastly, the mission of this board, and it says this at the front of our agenda for every meeting. The mission of this board of trustees is to champion the cause of students in public education by establishing the framework through which all educational resources are maximized. Okay. And that's something that we can discuss at the strategic planning meeting. We could enhance it, we could change it, okay? But I think this tells us what we need to do, okay? Questions, Ursula?
Sorry. Would you scroll all the way back to the first slide? So as you were going through these, Sue, I feel like with most of the slides, I'm like, oh, I know how we do that. I see us do that in meetings. I see us do that. This slide, every time we talk about this, I'm kind of left with the same thing, which is, how are we doing this? Are we doing this? I mean, and someone them, I can see how we do, but when it really comes to like setting the direction of the district, do you ever get any clear ideas of like, what does that actually look like?
Exactly why we're doing strategic planning this fall.
Well, but the impression I keep getting with the strategic planning is that we want that to come from the community. Is that correct?
Yes, the community will be a partner in that, yeah.
Is the community the core of that? Are we equal partners with the
Yes.
community? Equal partners with the community. Okay. So when we do the strategic planning, that will help us to set the direction of this.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
I feel like we should clap.
No, I didn't dance.
Now, next.
That can change. It could change, but it won't. Okay, next on the agenda, information only monthly financial reports. Gwen?
Kelly, if you wanna, this is the almost finished, health insurance plan financials. They're still preliminary till we get our bank statements from the county treasurer's office, but I think they're pretty well finalized. And, don't scroll up yet. Basically what we're looking at here, the very top is the cash shortfall at the county treasurer's office is that $554,000. But we do have roughly $350 in First Interstate Bank. And so at the end of the day, our shortfall was $204,000, which is better than we thought it was gonna be. And so I think that's actually a positive thing. And, next year, we'll include that shortfall in setting premiums for the following year. So this is an estimating game. We don't have the actual numbers, so we estimate, set those premiums where we think they need to be. And then, following this front report is the detail, keep going, and several pages of the combined activities. So that's the health plan, the dental plan, the vision plan, the life insurance, the flex. And keep going. Okay, scroll back up for just a minute, Kelly. So the lower right-hand corner of this shows how our plan did just in the previous 12 months. And so we actually were $612,000 to the good. But remember, we came into the year 1.2 million in the negative. So, but if we had taken just this year's premiums and just this year's expenditures, we would have been operating in the black. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And then also, there's a report that's specifically the medical plan. There's a report on the Care Here Clinic. Care Here Clinic shows a negative balance of 480, keep going, yeah, right there, the 426,000. But of course, the clinic doesn't have any revenue. The revenue to the clinic is savings in our medical costs. So, but that's basically what it cost us to operate it for a year. So, that pretty much takes care of that. Unless you have any questions about the health insurance plan, Scott.
I apologize, I had to miss the finance committee meeting on Friday, but, so we're gonna be able to make up that difference that we have for next year with an increase in premiums, and we can get rid of that surcharge that's going towards, or to the employers monthly.
Yeah, the surcharge has ended,
Okay.
so it won't happen in this next fiscal year. And if we happen to make up that $200,000 in the next 12 months, it won't be included in the premiums for the following year. But if we don't make it up, then we'll see a premium increase that includes that shortfall a year from now.
So there won't be a premium increase for,
there is a premium increase, a 6.5% premium increase for next year. We never know what the final numbers are gonna be, Scott, so as, close as we can get. We estimated a 0, getting to 0. We didn't quite get to 0. So, it might be the following year, but maybe. We do have currently 40 additional employees on the plan, and we haven't brought on board our new, district employees. So we could see as many as a 60, employee increase to the plan, we're thinking, which of course, well, the more people that are on the plan, the better that is. So, we may get to that goal of making a little bit of money from the plan.
Did you point out how the stop loss worked this year for us?
So if you want to scroll back up, so one of the things about the stop loss that we learned is that once a claim hits the stop loss, they basically stop paying the claims, they hold the claims, and then the stop loss money and the claims come through at the same time. And we were under the impression that the claims had been paid, and when we received the $700,000 in stop loss, that was going to create a positive balance. And so we've learned that the hard way, that really the stop loss and the claims come together and they just net out at 0. So we can't really depend, we should not factor in stop loss reimbursements into our bottom line because they come together, the claims and the reimbursement.
But for this particular year, we had stop loss reimbursement of $1.8 million. The premium for that stop loss was $800,000. So no, the insurance company is not happy with this, but we are thrilled.
And our stop loss went up a little bit, but not substantially. I mean, was it 3%? Can't
Yes.
remember where we landed at, yeah. And it is our plan to bid out our third-party administration and probably our stop loss sometime in the fall, so that we have good information in about January when we're making plans for the following year. We just want to see what else is out there. Maybe there's a third-party administrator that has some other ideas or doing some different things that we might want to capitalize on. So you'll be seeing that in the fall. And you will see the final draft of this probably at next month's board meeting, but this is fairly final. So Kelly, if you would like to unshare. And so at the last board meeting, we reviewed the general fund in fairly detailed fashion. And so we're going to talk about the rest of the funds tonight. Last board meeting, we talked about the general fund for an hour and a half. Tonight, we're going to talk for 9 hours, but won't be too bad.
No, you're not.
Okay, so just a review of the general fund, we're still kind of, every day I work on this because we're hiring people and their salaries change and just fine tuning until we get to the August board meeting, which is where we actually adopt the budget. And so we're about $2.2 million over budget right now in the general fund. And of course, we're going to offset that mostly with ESSER funds, right? Or entirely with ESSER funds. So a couple of other things on the general fund, our property liability insurance had a clause in it that they could not increase our premium by more than 8%, and it was exactly 8%, which makes sense. We're still about $100,000 under the second quote that we had on our insurance a year ago, so we're still saving money. Then secondly, you may have read some of the Montana School Boards Association information in regard to the CSCT program, which is a program that provides social and emotional services for students. And we contract with Logan Health, Kalispell Regional, to provide those services. We send They send us a bill, we send it to the Department of Public Health and Human Services, they send us the payment, we get the payment carried. And there's really no involvement, or no use of our money. So, for the last few years, Department of Public Health and Human Services, there's a match required. And so they've been using a report of what we spend on utilities and phone and that sort of thing for the space that we provide to them in our buildings. We report the size of the space, the size of the building. They pull the data out of our annual report to the Office of Public Instruction and say, okay, your match is X number of dollars. But there was no actual cash changed hands. And in the last legislative session, the legislature didn't like that. The state was actually using Medicaid dollars that were going unspent as the cash match, and legislature didn't like it. So they took the program out from under the oversight of the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and they turned it over to the Office of Public Instruction. And the match is about 35%. So if we have a service for $100, Department of Public Health and Human Services, through the use of Medicaid dollars, would pay $65 of those services. And the $35 was that match, that paper match that we did once a year. Now they're saying that 35% needs to be a cash match. And in Kalispell, we spend about $1 million a year, or we cycle through $1 million a year for CSCT services. So our match would be about $350,000. And the OPI is saying that we need to budget for the match in our general fund. And that's a lot of money out of our mostly elementary general fund budget. So schools, you see articles in the newspapers about parents who are very concerned about their children losing services. Schools are nervous that they can't come up with a match and they're canceling services. And Department of Public Health is trying to reassure us that we will get our match back. We'll send our monthly, we'll send our 35% to the OPI, and the legislature has given them the authority to send it back to us up to about $8 million. They also provided $2 million worth of funding to get us through the summer, and to use for the match to get us through the summer. So, but the Office of Public Instruction doesn't feel as comfortable about that as the Department of Public Health and Human Services. So they're saying, you need to send us the money, probably out of your general fund. They did give a laundry list of other places that we could get the money rather than the general fund. I didn't really see anything on the list that really works for us necessarily. So my plan is to pay those services out of the general fund, request our match to be returned to us. It has to go into Fund 15. You never put money into the general fund because it's a budgeted fund, it's not a cash fund. So the money goes to Fund 15. In Fund 15, we'll pay the utilities and the telephone and the things that we were using for our match. So I think we're going to be fine. Their most recent numbers that came out of the OPI said we can guarantee you're going to get $17 of the $35 back, but you need to be prepared to pay the $18. So that's down to $180,000 for us. I actually think we're going to get it all back, but they're still working through the process. So we don't want to discontinue services to kids. We think it's important, and it's going to take a while to get this all figured out. So our plan is just to proceed, send our 35% match, see what we get back. If we get 2 or 3 months into this and find out that in fact we're not going to get our match back, then we'll probably have some more conversations. Right now, tonight, you're going to see a contract with Logan Health for CSCT services, and in that contract, it does say that if we get into a situation where there's a significant financial impact to the district, we can dissolve the contract. And I don't think it's going to be a problem, but my crystal ball might not be clear. We'll see. So that's happening in the general fund. The other general fund decision that we need to make in August is, are we going to levy the elementary levy that we recently passed? So I know we've had some preliminary discussions about that. I think people have some thoughts on that. We don't have to make a decision tonight. We'll discuss that, we'll discuss that again at the next finance meeting, and at that August budget meeting, we will have to make a decision, and it will be its own, motion and topic on the agenda. So, you know, it won't just be folded into the budget. Right now, it's not considered in the budget, so it won't be until you give direction to do so.
Gwen, will that be at the August 10th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
So let's take a quick look at some of the other funds. So transportation is for transporting children to and from school. It does not include field trips. It does not include extracurricular activities. We charge some of administrative costs to the transportation budget, so that's what you see here first. And we charge a portion of our principals' salaries to the transportation budget. And their office managers, they deal with questions about transportation, issues that might arise on buses and that sort of thing. We also have a technology component in the transportation budget, and part of Sarah's, the special ed department. A small portion of her salary is funded there as well, because she deals with transporting special needs students. And then we have a director, and we have a mechanic, and we have an office manager. We have crossing guards at the buildings. These are not up to date because typically the buildings don't assign these extra duties until they've got all their paras hired, they know how many they have, and they put together their master schedule. So these are placeholders for what that cost might look like. Each building has 2 people for 2 hours per day. And they also have transportation aides who are out there in the morning and the afternoon as children are getting on and off of buses to make sure that children are getting on the right bus and that, you know, there are no issues getting them on their buses and on their way home. And then we have special ed bus monitors, which sometimes we have students who actually need a monitor to ride the bus with them. And we've had a difficult time filling those. And we're going to be talking about some ideas of a way, because these are 4-hour-a-day jobs. And, you know, you can get an 8-hour-a-day job. There's not a lot of interest in these, but we've got some ideas. And we'll talk about that, and we'll bring those back around to you. But we do need to try to fill those, because if a student, if their IEP says they need someone to monitor them or be on the bus with them, we need to try to comply to the, you know, our very best ability. So we pay bus drivers, special ed bus drivers, we pay our contract bus drivers, benefits for the employees that work directly for us. And here's our private bus contractors, utilities that have to do with that building and such. And then probably the one thing that's, you know, it's all the same things that every department needs. The one thing that's a little different is that we started to levy last year some additional dollars to build our transportation facility. And you can actually build the transportation facility out of the transportation fund. And you can levy it in 1 year. We've been looking at plans. We've talked about anywhere from $3.5 million to $5 million to build this facility. Well, we're not going to levy that kind of an amount in one cycle. So we started levying last year. We'll levy again this year. We talked about approximately $400,000 a year. We also have some transportation money that's been transferred into the interlocal agreement fund, and all of that combined should get us to the place by next spring that we would be able to actually start the building. We'll be having the plans completed this fall. We'll out for bid in about January. We'll know what it's actually going to cost, and then we'll be ready to start the project by summer. So that's what you see in the transportation fund. Questions on transportation? Okay, the bus depreciation fund, so we purchase buses, for our transporting of students, and then we depreciate them over a period of 5 to 7 years. You can depreciate them up to 150% because they last a long time, and by the time we go to replace them, they've increased in cost. And we have a very healthy, bus transportation fund. We typically buy 3 to 4 buses a year, and so that we're, you know, continually updating our fleet and not getting behind on that. So this is about a $2.7 million budget. A couple of things that we're going to be discussing in the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring them back around to you. But one is replacing cameras in about half of our buses, and then next fiscal year, we'll replace the other half. And also the stop arms for buses. Those can both be purchased out of the bus depreciation fund. So we've got the cash to do it. The fund is healthy. I believe that we can purchase the buses we want to replace and those 2 items. Annie is still gathering some data on the stop arms, and we'll be bringing forward a recommendation on the stop arms. And she's getting quotes on the cameras, so we'll bring those forward as well. But in my opinion, we definitely have the money to do that. So we don't have our taxable values, and we won't have those until almost the end of July. And that's kind of the final piece that's going to tell us how many mills we need to levy. And so that's kind of the final piece as far as, do we have mills available to add to the transportation fund? You know, or it looks like most of our mills across the funds will be going down. And typically we keep them level or on a slight incline. So once we have the taxable values at the final budget meeting, we'll talk about how we can spread the mills that might be available to us out across the funds where they might be needed. So questions on mills? Do you sort of understand mills? And that's just the mechanism. Yes, Will?
I don't have a question on mill, but I do have a question about the buses, because we had a couple of really bad accidents this last year, and stop arms, I think, would be part of addressing that. Is that part of why we're getting stop arms?
Yeah, I believe the safety is definitely an issue. And some state law was passed in regard to stop arms. But there's quite a few things to consider. It's not just, hey, let's just put on the stop. They might not even be room in the street to open the stop arm. So if you can pick up the kids on the side of the bus that the door is on, you don't really need stop arms. But we can't really reroute enough of our routes to always pick up the kids on that side. But Micah, why don't you speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a number of complicating things to it. Just as an example, for most of our in-town routes that are driving, like, say, down 3rd Avenue East, there isn't actually enough room to open a 6-foot stop arm, have the bus in the middle of the road with cars parked on either side. So then we're contemplating, well, do we have to move all of our stops into intersections in order to accommodate that? Are we going to be allowed to put on a shorter stop arm? Those kind of things. And we've been doing some things proactively. You know, Annie and I worked earlier this year to move all of our routes that are at least possible that are on the highways off the highway. And then, but you know, it changes, you know, so someone was living in this one location that had a dead end, you can't turn a bus around, and now you've got someone who moves in, you know, a month later, and now you've got to create a stop there. But even moving those stops off the highway, if you're trying to create a congregation point, one of the challenges would be that, you know, let's say the stop is on Highway 93 out by Silverbrook Estates. That's where we have one of our main pickup locations. Kids would actually walk down their driveway, walk along Highway 93 to get to a bus stop that's off the highway. And then when you think about that in winter conditions and there's snow and berms, and I mean, there's just a lot of different pieces to consider with all of those things. But we're going to do whatever we can to ensure safety. And we already have some stop arms on routes out on the highway right now, as it is. It's just a matter of do we outfit every single bus with one, and where is it required, and what's gonna make the most sense as far as those are concerned.
Mike, I also wanted to ask about the bus cameras being replaced. Why are the cameras being replaced?
Well, the technology kind of runs out. It's kind of like your computer. After a while, it quits recording,
Or really old cameras with poor,
or old cameras or poor, data recording systems. You know, they record so many times, and then that information gets erased after 30 days, and then it's just an ongoing cycle. But, yeah, a lot of the same reasons.
thanks.
Yep.
And so Annie is still gathering some information on the stop arms, and when we're ready, when she has a recommendation, we'll definitely be bringing it forward so that you know what kind of the upshot is. And one of the questions is, do we buy them for all of the buses, including the contractors? Which seems to make sense, because if we require contractors to buy them, they're gonna wanna open up their contract and renegotiate enough money to buy them. So maybe we buy them, get a better price for a larger number, and so I think that makes sense. I think that's what you'll be hearing her bring forward, but she's still gathering a little bit of information that she was missing. So food service department, and of course this fund, runs off of the revenue that we generate, from the food service, and this past year, we're gonna end the year with about $300,000 in the bank, so that's a positive thing. And then, of course, we just pay the people who work in the department, run the department, we buy the food. We just worked on this today, so you see a lot of red. I'm just verifying numbers, making sure I have the right people. We do have numerous vacancies, and Jan and I have been in communication about, you know, how are we gonna get these filled? And she's pretty creative about, you know, moving people around and doing what she can to have quality people in every kitchen. So, still just kind of preliminarily working on this, and the expenditures will not exceed the projected revenues. So that fund wouldn't affect any of our other funds. If we did run it in the negative, it would probably be a general fund expenditure. It's only the only other place to get it. So it basically takes education dollars away from students, and we try to avoid that. So next up is the tuition fund. There's just a few things allowed by law in this. One is to pay tuition for students that belong to Kalispell Public Schools who are in a day treatment program. And this is basically Crossroads. So our students attended there this year. At the end of the school year, they send us an invoice for the number of days that the students attended, and then we budget it and levy for it the following year. So we know exactly what we need, right? So we have their invoices, we know what the bill is. We also have the bill from the Missoula County Juvenile Detention Center, same deal. Students who lived in our district, who ended up in the detention center, there's an education component, and they charge it back to the school. And it's a permissive levy. We do not have to vote this. And then the biggie, the thing that has really changed in the last couple of years, is the ability to levy permissively in the tuition fund for special education costs that are kind of over and above your reimbursement that you get from the state and the feds. And so for high needs students, we literally take every single student that we think might qualify for this. We track the cost, their share of the cost of the teacher, the para, the supplies for the classroom, and then specifically to that student, their speech therapy, their occupational therapy, their physical therapy. And so we have this massive spreadsheet, and every student has their own tab on it. And we pull that all together and we reduce it by the amount of special ed funding we get from the state, and then we can permissively levy that in the next year. So again, it's expenditures from this past year, and we levy it next year. Some people kind of estimate what their expenditures are in the current year and levy it at the same time, and we've done the model where we know what we spent, we know exactly what we need to levy, or what we can levy. So, and this year we moved, normally we transfer quite a bit of money out of the tuition fund into the interlocal agreement fund, because we were still able to pay the expenditures out of the general fund, and this is a reimbursement for what we've already spent. This next fiscal year, I've moved, special ed staff into this tuition fund, and we'll basically be using all of those dollars for special ed. They no longer will fit in the general fund, as you can see. So we likely will not see much as far as transfers out of that fund in the future, which is fine. It's, we're using it the way it's supposed to be used. So the retirement fund, oh geez, I have a couple of, it's in food service, so, because I'm not done with it. But the retirement fund is where we pay for teachers' retirement, public employees' retirement, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. Work comp, health insurance come out of the general fund, or they follow the fund that the employee is paid out of. But, this is a countywide levy, so every school district submits their retirement budget to the county, and then we all share in that levy. So some other schools might be sharing in our retirement, or we might be sharing in theirs, depending on taxable values and the amount of our levies and such. So as I finalize, most of these are done. The adult ed is not done. Special ed, Sarah and I are going to get together here in the next few days to finish up the special ed budget and then the food service. And basically what your expenditures are is what you budget. And typically I don't budget enough, and I did that again this year. In the elementary retirement fund, we got the CRF money, and so we were able to pay salaries out of the CRF money and take the benefits out of the retirement fund. But I didn't know I was going to get that when I was setting the budget in August. So we have a shortfall again, so it'll end up on the audit. And we just keep trying to get closer, but things change after you set the budget. The federal programs, we don't have a lot of information for yet. We've gotten the numbers for the special ed federal dollars. We haven't got our allowances for Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title III. The ESSER funds will go into the federal programs fund. So hopefully we'll get those numbers fairly soon, and then we'll just build whatever we can, whatever expenditures we can move into the federal programs, we will do that. I don't have any indication that they're going to change much from last year, so I don't foresee any problems there. Adult ed probably needs some work by the administration. We haven't really touched down on this, but basically, in the past, the law said you could levy 1 mil in the elementary, 1 mil in the high school, and then so a lot of school districts did that. That law disappeared, just went off the books in some revisions for adult ed. So really, you could levy whatever you want, but obviously, you're not going to take advantage of the situation. And we've levied right around $1 million each year, and then the bulk of it has been shifted into the interlocal agreement fund. We've talked about building a more robust adult ed opportunity for our community. We haven't had the time to make that happen, and now we've got a couple of people working on that sort of thing, so I think you might see something come out of that in the near future. So we need to have a conversation amongst us to decide what that might look like, what we want to levy for next year, but we haven't done that yet. Traffic ed went through a lot of revisions this year. This fund is specifically for funding the traffic ed program. It's cash fund, so we get some funding from the state, $100 for every student that goes through the program, and then we charge students. This next year it's $310. I think last year was $270. So we increased that a little bit. We increased our number of instructors. We've added 2 additional cars so that we could instruct another 100 students. We typically run 500 students through this program. Next year, our intention is to teach 600 students to drive. And right now, our expenditures are exceeding our revenues by a little bit. I think we're in the we have about a $10,000 shortfall. Callie and I will be meeting with the 2 gentlemen that operate this program, talking about ways to offset that. And we do have a pretty good cash balance. I think we're down to like $250,000, but that's very healthy. So we could dip into that a little bit, and you'll know more about that at the final.
Did we, I feel like we voted for something, we like expanded, it's in the process of expanding traffic education? Or did it?
We bought 2 new cars last, like midwinter, spring, but with the idea that we would expand offerings over the summer, for sure. And then it's a year-round
Is
program,
that
right?
happening, it's like already doing
Yes,
this summer?
yes.
Okay.
And then we paid for, I think, 5 or 6 new instructors to go to Northern to get endorsed. It's about $1,700. They have a choice of taking the money or moving over on the salary schedule. They provide their own meals and lodging while they're there, so it's kind of a partnership. But several of our, current traffic ed teachers are retired, they're actually already retired. And then they continue to teach traffic ed, but they're ready to retire. So, it was time to beef up the staffing to make sure that, that this program continues. It's important.
Do you know, I don't know if there's a question for you, but is that like helping with the wait list?
I believe it is.
enough?
Yeah.
It's making a little dent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
That and the Montana law that said, you know, parents can teach their 15-year-olds to drive and sign off on their hours and get them a license. And so we had numerous children withdraw, which was a little disheartening because I'm not sure that's a good idea, but.
I didn't withdraw my test.
Yeah. Tracy's still learning how to drive, so she's not gonna. Yeah, but, yeah, the wait list, but we really wanna make sure that we actually fill all 600 seats, because now
Maybe
yeah.
we'll get them back. My kid had to wait because of COVID, and I was like, well, he's 16, maybe I'll teach him that. Didn't last.
Yeah. Okay, good to know.
They might come back.
So, yeah, we might get another round of those students. So the technology fund, we have a levy on the elementary side. This is the one that we, passed for dollars instead of mills. So when the taxable value goes up, this bumps up the levy a little bit. We can, levy from now until 2025, so eventually we'll have to run the levy again. It's not permissive. Each of the schools the elementary schools get an allocation based on the number of students that they have, and they can use it for whatever technology needs they have. There's also a $30,000 lab rotation here, and each year one school gets that lab rotation. This year it's Peterson. And then we also have a $40,000 set aside for innovative programs. We've been using that to upgrade the elementary cameras. We've used that for the last 2 years, and we're gonna do 1 more year, and that'll get us pretty close to where we want to be with the cameras. And then that $40,000 will become available to do something else. That was what we used to put the IdentiKid, setups in each of the elementary schools. When you go in, you register and that sort of thing. We also have, technology teachers in the elementary schools, and so each building has a technology teacher. We pay for that out of this fund, and their benefits. And we pay for their, connectivity, actually, these are a variety of contracts here, E-rate consulting, that sort of thing. Here is the cost on the internet service. And that is E-rateable, so we get some E-rate reimbursement, and that has to go into the technology fund, so that's why I budget to pay these things out of the technology fund. Now, next year, we've budgeted all of this internet cost in ESSER. So we'll still get the E-rate reimbursement, it'll go into the technology fund and just help us down the road, right? And also the software, all the software. Here's the professional development for the IT team, which is critical to keep them on the cutting edge. You see some negative numbers in here, and that was because they made travel arrangements during COVID, and then they weren't able to travel, and so we got money back or credits, and so you see that oddity of a credit in this fund. But we buy IT equipment, whether it's servers, security system upgrades, that sort of thing, and that's all overseen by the technology department. Actually, all of the technology is overseen by that department. even though a building might have an allocation, they run all of their purchases through the IT department to make sure that they'll work with our system and that sort of thing. So there's all the software, and again, we budget the software in the elementary technology fund, but in the high school general fund, because we don't have a high school levy. And this year, we put all of the software in ESSER. So again, we should have some of the dollars left, and that'll just get us, you know, a little further down the road, or maybe when ESSER runs out and some of the equipment we bought is worn out, then we'll have some extra dollars in here to replace some of that. So that fund looks good, it's solid, we already have the authority to levy it. Depending on the taxable values, this $700,000 will probably be more than that. And the debt service, I'm still working on. We'll take a look at that in August. The building fund is where the remaining dollars are from the bond. So on the high school side, it's right at $1 million in there. On the elementary side, we pretty much spent it all. There's about 40,000. I think we'll pay for the fire doors that are being replaced this summer and probably pretty much use those dollars. And then on the high school side, we do have some roofing projects that are in progress, and that sophomore, really junior parking lot, we talked about it, that's sophomore parking lot, found out it's really junior parking lot. And so it's got to be finished this summer. But after those things are completed, we'll still have close to $1 million. And the idea is that we will hold on to that in hopes that some opportunities to purchase property will come. That was one of the things that was in the bond. But the board can make a decision to spend those dollars. We've pretty much met all of our obligations under the bond. However, proportionally, because we said, you know, the bulk of the high school bond was going to Flathead, some to Ag, some to LEC, very little to Glacier. So we can't like get outside of that plan, but the board has some latitude with how to spend those dollars. They don't have to sit there, and if at some point you're like, well, we need it for this or that, you can take action to use it. The building reserve fund has a permissive levy again. Remember, it's X number of dollars per student that you can levy permissively, and then the state matches it. So we have some cash to reappropriate in that fund because we haven't really accessed it because we were using our bond dollars, right? And so the state is going to contribute about $270,000 to that fund, and the district then can permissively levy that $270 or so that's there. And I've dropped a few things in here as far as the budget side of things. One being the siding at Glacier High School. And obviously, we are hoping to get some insurance rebate from the damage that was done there. But I've kind of earmarked $1.5 million of that for the siding, because we need to fix it, and that's really the best place to get it. And we have the money there. And we might drop some other things in there as requests come forward. Greg's salary will need to come out of there as well, and I haven't plugged that in yet. So the final piece of this is the interlocal agreement fund, and internal service fund is the print shop, and basically we pay some salaries, buy some paper, and that sort of thing. And then school districts pay for their utilization of the print shop, and it's just a net zero at the end of the year. We've supplemented that a little bit with some ESSER dollars this last year, and we probably will again next year. And then that frees up a little bit more of their block grant if they don't have to pay for their printing, right? So kind of a way to augment their block grant. So the interlocal agreement fund, this is a rundown of what has happened in that fund since 2011. The money in, the money out. You see deposits from the transportation fund that I kind of touched on. That year we put in $175,000, and at the bottom of this I've summarized the transportation dollars that have gone in there, because it makes sense that they would then be turned around and used for the facility that we need to build. So you see a variety of things that we've done over time. Technology. We started some set-asides for track and turf replacement on the elementary. We said, let's set aside $50,000 every year to the elementary. Then as tracks need to be resurfaced, we'll have the money sitting there to do it. And then the turf, we know that, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years, they'll need to be replaced to the tune of about $500,000. So in that side, we said, let's set aside $100,000 a year. And then over the last couple of years, we've refinished some floors at the LEC and some gym floors, I think at the middle school. We did a glacier water project. So this is held on the high school side. So every trustee has to vote on any expenditures. We actually have a formal written agreement that says the administration cannot tap these funds without bringing it forward to you first, okay? So anytime money is spent out of here, you'll be well aware of it. And last year, we estimated that we were gonna have some budget shortfalls, and we said, you know, we're gonna go to the interlocal agreement fund for that. And you'll approve that request usually at the final budget meeting. We won't have a request like that this year because we're gonna be using ESSER. So here we are in this year, we had a little bit of investment earnings. Each year, like that $250,000 shortfall in health insurance, we take the money out of the interlocal agreement fund, put it in the health insurance fund one day, and the next day we return it. So it's just basically a loan, but we can't have a negative balance in a fund at the county treasurer's office. So we just move the money back and forth, and so this was a loan. The loan came out up here in last year's money, and then it came back in this year's, and you'll see the same thing happen when we finalize all of our paperwork, our reporting at the end of this year. We also made an agreement with the teachers that we would settle up on that $1.2 million shortfall, 70% of it on the district side and 30% from employees. We took that out of the interlocal agreement fund. This year, our elementary general fund, we overspent by $303,000, but we have $313 left on the high school side, so that will flow through the interlocal agreement fund as well. We thought we might need some money to help pay for the internet service on the high school side because we really don't have the funds for that, and we didn't have room to put it in the general fund, but along came ESSER, so we don't need to use those dollars. And then Callie often does not spend all of her curriculum budget. And so if there's money left at the end of the year and some of it is curriculum, we have earmarked it. Because you've looked, Callie has presented for you what curriculum items are coming down the pipe. So we're just sort of building an earmark, again, a set aside. Now, keep in mind, though, that this board can do whatever you want. If you come to a meeting and you decide, you know what, we're going to take the whole fund and do such and such with it, it just requires a vote. There's no, we've set them aside, but you can change your mind. And people that follow you can change their minds, right? This is not set in stone. And so right now, on the transportation side, thus far, over the life of this fund, we have put $2.3 million in this fund that was transportation dollars. So makes sense that that would then become available for the new facility. And then we add those levies that we've done the last couple of years, and we'll get to about $3.5 million. The project could come in as high as $1.5 million. Eventually, we're going to come back to you and say, okay, this is what we have. This is what it looks like. What do you think? And you'll give us some direction on what you want us to do. So you'll be seeing that again. And then this past year, we did some floor refinishes, grand piano, some textbooks. We paid for some land. We just finished the purchase of the land where the transportation and maintenance facility will sit. And we shared that based on the estimated cost, $75.25. But again, once money goes in here, it loses its identity. So we don't have to take transportation and spend it on transportation. We can spend it however we want. And that's a nice feature because we need some money for a maintenance building, and there isn't a maintenance fund. So, the ability to have that flexibility in this interlocal agreement fund is huge for us. Here's what we're gonna need to move out to balance our cash at the county treasurer for health insurance. And then I sort of started on, these are kind of what I'm estimating will come in out of tuition and adult ed. There'll be about $10,000 from the general fund, but I kind of accounted for it up above where you saw the $300,000. And transportation, we might move the money in here just to hold it and have it all in one place. Talk about that next month, but it won't probably become available for other uses. It'll be for the transportation building. So if we take the transportation dollars that went in and use them for the transportation building, this fund will be down, and we hold our set-asides in place. This fund will be down to about 2.2 million. It usually runs around between 3 and 5 million. And we've talked about setting a percentage of the general funds, like 1%. We really don't want this fund to get huge. There's no reason to do that, because then you turn around and levy your taxpayers while you have this huge savings account, right? So we're moderate, conservative in that look. But even if we do everything we kind of plan to do, there's still $1 million in that savings account. So that's kind of big picture. I did not post this information and send you the link because I'm working on it every day, and I have to repost. So now I will post it, and you'll have from now until August to get in there and look at these documents, look them over. If you have questions, call me, email, come see me. Our goal in August is to wrap up a few decisions. The interlocal agreement fund, money going in needs your permission. The elementary levy will need your action, and then we'll adopt it big picture, because you have seen these numbers starting in October of last year, right? So I kind of feel like you've seen them numerous times. There's still time for input, but we have to file it within like 7 days of adopting it. So we're getting near to the end of the opportunity to have input. So if you have questions or concerns, you can call Micah or myself, come and see us, and we'll try to address your concerns.
And Gwen, considering that we are not having another work session this month, this is a perfect time for us to really look at these numbers and ask any questions, before we get to the next meeting.
Gwen, just real quick, what was the deficit this year in the elementary district, and what are we projecting for next year?
So the actual deficit was $300,000, and we're projecting
1.2 million?
I think so. Too many numbers tonight. 1.2.
Thank you.
We have kind of a 4-year, look out to see what's going to happen as these numbers build on themselves and such. Kind of in anticipation of, should we levy on the elementary or shouldn't we? And I think that ESSER is going to keep us fairly solvent. I mean, if I really thought you absolutely needed to levy on the elementary side, that's the recommendation I would bring. But I'm with you. With many of you that think, we don't need it, we should probably hold off a year. But it's your decision, not mine, so. So this is what the numbers look like for next year, the 1.2 and the 931,000. And then because we don't have a levy in there, these shortfalls are just going to carry over into the next year, right? And we've made commitments to our employees and we have some new money next year. Remember, our legislative share is going from 1.5% to 2.5% increase on the revenues. So, the deficit is growing, definitely, but, not. Then the next year, We have some preliminary estimates from the legislature, a 1.8% increase, a 1.84. We're hoping, I'm looking at increases in the numbers of students, hoping for that. And here's the elementary levy coming in next year. Maybe we don't want to do it year 3, but, you know, the deficits are growing, but we still have, you know, we're going to use ESSER 2 here. We're going to use ESSER 3 here, and we can use ESSER 3 here. The following year, if we needed to, we could go to the interlocal agreement fund. So just kind of looking ahead so that we have at least a year to react to if we actually have to do some reductions. We should probably be passing a levy next spring, or attempting to pass, or a partial, and maybe pass 2 or 3 between now and the time we really need it. We're probably looking at a new school building. I think Mike is going to be bringing forward some projections that the city put together. We should be getting shovel ready, and we're probably, you know, based on the numbers of new homes in our school district, it's highly likely we're going to need a new school out in here. So just kind of looking at what the future looks like. We'll be voting that elementary technology again out here so that it comes in the following year. So, yeah, I think, Lance, that's kind of where you were going with your question is.
Yeah, the elementary interlocal's pretty, it doesn't cover as much as I would like, where the high school does, you know. It seems like you can balance a high school budget on the interlocal agreement. But the
Yeah, and the elementary, we're not maxed out on the budget. We have a couple percent, but we're talking small dollars. So what we're gonna be planning on there is hopefully more students. That's what's gonna make the difference. But yeah, you're right, Lance, we couldn't balance it with the interlocal agreement. That's a good point.
Jack, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a reminder that we approve a revenue budget, even though expenditures back all that up. So the key part is to make sure that we have enough revenue to cover the proposed expenditures. How much do we want to be critical about the proposed expenditures? I guess we can be as critical as we want to, but we have to recognize that 90% of the budget's personnel, 10% of it is support, and there's just not a lot of room to reduce expenditures. So we really just have, but by law, we're approving a revenue budget. So does revenue cover the expenditures?
Questions? Okay, I'll share the documents with you so you can check those out if you saw something you wanted to know more about. Call me.
Just on the A and B for next year, it's not the projected, right? It's actual that we had this year. So we're still gonna be a little low, is that how that goes?
Well, we were able to average over the last 3 years, which really helped us.
Okay.
But then 3 years from now, our 3-year average is gonna be quite a bit smaller because the COVID year is gonna be in that average, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a 3-year look, Tracy, but we can't do any anticipated enrollment increases or unanticipated enrollment increases. That's off the table, based on the legislature and the fact that we have ESSER money. They're just like, no, you have to live with what you got, what you received, no room for. So even if we get a large number of students returning in the fall that weren't here this year, we can't go to them for additional funding, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Next on the agenda is an information item, human resources and personnel. Tracy?
And I always go after Gwen, and you guys always tell me to hurry.
Well, stop going after.
Go.
Do I have to use this? Yeah.
Yeah, for the recording.
Can I just push this? That one's live. No, but I hate holding it, it's so weird. You can pull the one out and just stick it in. Huh? That one's pulled out, you can just write them. That's true. Well, most of you have seen this already, so we just wanted to give you an update.
It's working.
It is, you can hear? No.
We can see the red dot.
I'm loud enough, I'll just talk, all right?
Well, no, but it's broadcast, so the people that are listening
Yeah,
online need to be able to hear you.
Does it have a green dot?
Red dot.
Did
Push
you
it.
lose Jason?
There.
Start dancing.
Okay, they're very loud, so hold this up a little bit. So we wanted to update you on hiring in the Flathead, and a lot of you have seen this already in the Personnel Committee. So we'll go to the second slide. And what we're gonna do today is just provide a quick review of the past recruitment practices, give you an update of our current employment market, talk about current market, how that's gonna impact Kalispell Public Schools, and then update you on what we are doing to alleviate that, and discuss and brainstorm other options. So back in the olden days, which wasn't very long ago, we just would post a job to our website, and especially when we're talking about mostly local positions. So most of this presentation is talking about our parents, our custodians, our bus drivers, our maintenance workers, our bus monitors, all of the positions that we hire locally. We would just post an ad on the website, maybe put an ad in the paper, and we would get a number of applicants to fill those positions. We didn't do a lot of work on Facebook or Indeed. We didn't necessarily have to. It was a pretty, good market for an employer. It's not like that anymore. So how many of you have, seen Help Wanted, now hiring, $500 bonuses, $1,500 bonuses? We offer retirement, health plans. You go and get Taco John's, and they actually put a recruitment slip in your bag with your food. So we have a significant shortage in our local market. And what happens when we have that is we see it directly impact our support positions within the district. And that includes our substitutes. Okay? So this was, I believe, in March, but it was a 4.7 unemployment rate. That's only about 2,300 people. So a lot of people are under the impression that after the governor had taken away that additional funding for unemployment, that we would have a rush of people coming in off of unemployment. That's not the case. We do not have a lot of people on unemployment. Current open vacancies through the Flathead Job Service, this is the job service, is 1,200 vacancy postings. That doesn't include multiple positions that there are for each vacancy. So let's say they're trying to hire 5 custodians out of 1 vacancy. So this is significant. The job service said that we are about 7,000 people short in our labor market in the Flathead Valley. And if you look around, that's probably accurate when you see those positions. The March state unemployment was 19,000. March of last year was 19,250. This is the worst employment market the job service has ever seen. That's a little scary. So next slide. I thought this was interesting. So the quote, I'll go ahead and read this because it's pretty apparent even last year in several industries. In a nutshell, it's pretty simple. The labor force is 4 million lower nationally than it was before the pandemic. There's been considerable withdrawal from the labor force. It means that you're not looking for a job anymore. You have found other ways to support yourself. So there's 2 main things that are going on within the job market on a national or worldwide basis. One, the baby boomers, sorry, if you're a baby boomer, you have or are aging out of the job force. The second is that we don't have a lot of people that are looking for work because they've found other ways. They're advertising on Etsy, they're doing something else. This is not a short-term problem. This is not going to resolve itself quickly. This is a long-term issue that we have that's a national crisis. So our local businesses, and again, this was a while ago, I think when I put together the slide, the average hourly rate was $13.50, it's up to $15.50 now. And, you know, this is listing just the jobs, within the fast food service industry. When we're looking at our support positions, so when we're looking at a para, when we're looking at food service workers, when we're looking at a custodian, we have to look at the local market. If you can make $12 or $13 an hour as a para, but you can make $21 an hour working at Frugal's, what are you gonna decide to do? So it's a very competitive market. And then the next slide will show you our other businesses that are considered our banks, our grocery stores, and our hotels. Next slide. We have all seen, our local, industry close down. We've seen significant impacts to a lot of our businesses. This isn't even a comprehensive list. Montana Coffee Traders, they closed their Kalispell store. Split Rock is closed. S&M Tacos has significantly reduced their hours, and it goes on down the line. So businesses are either closing or they are significantly reducing their hours, or they're changing with just maybe a drive-through. You see that with the fast food restaurants. McKinsey River put this out on their website, and I thought that this was really important because this is kind of a side note, but in our service industry specifically, they are so understaffed and they are so stressed out that they're losing employees to that as well. So we went to dinner at Tupelo's on Saturday, which is a high-end restaurant in Whitefish. I wouldn't have thought that they would have problems getting help. And we were 45 minutes late for our 7:30 reservation because they were that short-handed. So it's hitting everyone. Next slide. So when we start to look at what our fall is going to look like, and currently, what we're currently dealing with, we are understaffed with our custodians. We have 3 custodian positions that we've been trying to fill for probably the last 6 months. You heard Gwen talk about food service workers. In the fall is when we hire most of our para support, and it's crucial that we have this para support in our classrooms. It's also important that we have bus monitors on our buses. When Sue talked about student impact, this is direct student impact. So we are preparing and trying to anticipate this. It's not, like I said, it's not a temporary issue, and we do not have a flux of new people coming into the market, and so essentially we are fighting with other businesses to get employees. So where does that fall on us? We have to start marketing. So we have updated our employee page on our website. We've been working with Stephanie Hill, who's the French teacher at GHS. She also handles all the PR for the district. She's done a fantastic job. So we've updated our employment page on our website. We're simplifying our application. If you go on to Indeed, you'll see where it says simple application, easy application, one-page application. And so for us to have all these pages and pages and pages that you have to go through, that's a hindrance. And so we've simplified our applications for those positions. We're developing a comprehensive marketing strategy for all of our different positions, and it's customized. So if any of you are on Instagram or Twitter, you might have seen our custodial ad that hit last week. And it said that if you like music better than people, this is the job for you. So, and we're going to be doing that. We're going to be trying to get those younger kids, the ones that are millennials and things like that. So the parents might have a different message. The bus monitors might have a different message. Food service workers. We have to start marketing. And then we have to rethink our advertising strategies. So as I showed in the first slide, we might put that in the paper, We didn't really have to work hard. Our ads in our paper, from the data, when we have somebody that applies, we ask where they heard from the job, where they heard about the job. None of them said the newspaper. And that makes sense. How many of you still get the newspaper or read the newspaper? Online, yeah. Yeah, no. Maybe Jack.
Sally's not looking for it.
So we have to rethink. We have to be on Twitter, we have to be on Instagram, we have to be on Facebook. All of these things are even too young for me. I don't have a Twitter account or an Instagram account. I do have a Facebook account, but, we're trying new avenues.
Tracy, yours is MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace. I'm not that old. Sorry.
You are.
I don't do that on
I'm that
MySpace.
old.
I don't act that
We all
old.
did my.
So there's a lot of different things that we can consider. They all have pros and cons. You know, we could increase our starting wage. As you saw with the general budget, that we have a lot of slush fund there. We're not like a Taco John's where they increase their tacos. Although Callie gave us a good insight that that's not always an easy thing for a fast food restaurant to do either. We can look at signing bonuses, but then what do we do about the people that we hired 2 months ago? How is that going to impact them? Retention bonuses. Do we start paying people for staying longer? And what does that look like? Is a retention bonus 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years? What does that look like? We feel like if we can get an employee to stay up around 7 years, they make enough money and they have enough invested in the retirement plan that's kind of like that golden handcuff. But we have the first 1 to 5 years, well, you know,
Yeah, she said no.
1 to 5 years, that, that's what they're called. The 1 to 5 years that we need to look at. Finder's fee. We tried this with our substitutes last year. Everybody was excited about the idea. We only had 2 people that actually followed through.
Micah was still waiting.
I'm still waiting for my check.
Yeah, you were ineligible. Continuing education, that's something that you'll see a lot of fast food restaurants are offering. We used to be able to rest on our laurels saying, hey, we offer retirement, we offer insurance, we offer all of these additional benefits. We're not able to do that anymore because that's what the other companies are doing as well. Loyalty programs, clothing allowances. That sounds funny, but maybe we offer that for our parents or our food service workers. Returning bonuses, and then tenure bonuses. So there's a lot of different things that we could look at. These are some of the different tools that other companies are using. And how much of a benefit is that? I don't know. It all comes with pros and cons.
Tracy, we have a new one to add to that.
What?
Childcare.
Oh, good. That's on the next slide.
Oh, well, just a second here.
Yeah. So we need to, in addition to what I've just talked to you about, we also need to look kind of a little bit farther out. And I think that we need to be prepared as an organization to start talking about rental properties. For those of you that may not know, we've kind of become a rental agency in the Human Resource Department. We have a Google form that lists all of the potential rentals that are available. And then we have, all the employees have access to it, including our new employees. And so they go ahead and connect with that person, and it's been fairly successful. We've had a few people. Bidding wars over houses, you guys have all heard this. That's really challenging. One of the economic factors that we are seeing that, again, is unique to COVID is that we have people that live in Florida, or that work in Florida. I'm just saying Florida as an example, but Florida and California, they work there, but they live in Montana. They're making wages that are similar to Florida wages and California wages, and then they come here and live. So that is something, when I talk to the economists at the University of Montana, that he is really interested in how that is going to have long-term effects on local and regional bricks and mortar buildings. That's a unique situation that we've never had before. Teachers leaving their jobs because they can't afford to raise a family in the Flathead. It's expensive, we all know. Cost of living went up 3.7% in 1 year. The current median listing of a home price is $485,000. Median's hit on that. Just so you know, when I bought my house in 2014, it was $197. It's worth $350 now. Single-family homes increased 39.9% from March of 2020 to March of 2021. Another thing that's going on there is you have the VRBO industry, and they are taking houses out of the market because they have the weekly rates or the monthly rates. So they're actually taking our house inventory out of the market, which is another unique issue that we haven't had before. And then childcare. And I'll give Micah a couple of minutes because he actually went to a luncheon, was it the chamber luncheon, where you actually talked about childcare. But that is significant. That's a significant issue. You want to talk about it?
I'll save my time for another day.
Okay.
Unless you guys really want to hear.
Another thing.
I really do, no, I mean, if childcare is,
So Callie and Matt and I went to a chamber-sponsored luncheon, yesterday, and the topic was childcare in the Flathead Valley. And not unlike the labor shortages and woes that everybody's experiencing in their industry, they're also experiencing the same thing. And they provided some pretty interesting statistics that the average childcare worker in the Flathead Valley makes $11.50 an hour. That they need to charge, like, the nurturing center that offers an accredited program, they charge families $950 a month per child, but to actually make the numbers work, they need to charge double that. So if you think about what the income or median income is for someone in the Flathead Valley who works a $15 an hour job in order to be able to afford the child care, to have that full-time job, and then when you boil it all down, their take-home pay is roughly $8,000. So I'm gonna work full-time for $8,000 to have my child in childcare, and that's if I have one child. And it's just, you know, things are exacerbated in that. It was a problem long ago. I mean, this isn't new, but becoming more and more apparent as people are withdrawing from the workforce to raise their own kids. It was also interesting because they had 3 panelists, and every one of them, all separate people saying their own thing, referenced how they could partner with school districts and schools to help solve this problem. And I'm thinking, what facility, how are we going to recruit people to do childcare? What are we going to be able to pay them? What, you know, and whether or not we do it as an employee perk, you know, like a clothing allowance, like, hey, we offer childcare, you know, it's a reasonable rate, you're able to go to work, you get the same schedule. I mean, there's just a lot of things that are involved in that, just in that conversation alone. So, you know, definitely community problem, not necessarily a school problem. And I would actually say that offering early kindergarten to 4-year-olds is part of that solution. So in some ways we are addressing it, but, you know, definitely for everybody who has employees, this is a huge issue for them. You know, and they're trying to be as flexible as they can, but certainly something we'll continue to talk about.
So we're preparing for the fall. We're preparing to kind of face these recruitment challenges and get creative and see what we can do. But it's going to be an interesting fall for sure. Any questions?
Yes, sir. Do we have any, like, have any numbers been crunched on, if we were paying similar to what, like, these fast food places are paying, if we increase with the amount of pairs that we have, the amount of custodians that we have, what kind of an increase that would be to the budget? Or is that still like?
We've only talked about it, but the problem is as you can see, if you go back to that one site, Callie, that has the fast food, as they increase their rates, somebody increases it more. And so we don't see an end to that, and we don't necessarily know if that's the way to go. Because like Gwen also said, this market could crash at any point as well. And then we have employees that are making $20 an hour, which we really can't afford when when the market crashes. But when I put this together, on a Monday, and I think Frugals was at $17 an hour. And then when I presented this on Wednesday at personnel, they had bumped it up to 20. So all of these are probably outdated, even though they're only a couple months. But you'll see where they're just keeping, they're moving up. So again, we have to market. We have to say, why is Kalispell Public Schools the best place to work? What do we offer? What kind of working environment can we offer that's over and above somebody else in our competition? So that's really what we're working on, is that image.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we did run numbers on temporary pay and our lowest paid positions to go from $13 an hour to $15 an hour to be about $500,000 just at the entry level, to increase those salaries.
Not a lot of answers. So we're working on it.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Next on the agenda are personnel action items.
Sue, I'd move to approve as presented.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the personnel action items, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next, maintenance and grounds MOU.
Yeah, so we have come to a tentative agreement with our maintenance and ground association. It was a fairly positive and easy process. I don't even know, we met twice, so it was pretty easy. Not a lot of changes in here. There's some changes in spelling and wording and things like that. We did come to a 3-year agreement, which was fantastic, in terms of the annual COLA increases. And then the other big change that we made is with the job descriptions. And the reason for that is we used to have a maintenance worker and a grounds worker. But what we've done is modified the grounds worker in order to have some flexibility for 2 main reasons, so that we can have a little bit more flexibility when we hire people. Somebody that might not be at the level of a maintenance 2 might be able to come in as a maintenance 1 and then learn the job. And 2, we also have a tenure track for our maintenance staff. So if we hire them as a maintenance 1, they have the opportunity to learn the skills and eventually go into that maintenance 2 job if they want to. So, and that is a perk that I think will help us with recruitment. Greg, do you have any additional comments? Any questions on this? Well, I also want to thank our negotiation team, Scott, Sue, and Jack. They are helping us with our negotiations this year. They worked on this with the admin team.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Sue, I'll make a motion that we approve the maintenance contract as presented.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Sue.
Thank you, Lance. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the maintenance grounds MOU, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed without objection. Next, Micah, the 2021 MTSBA membership election ballot.
Yes, so So at the MTSBA annual meeting, there was not a quorum of representatives there to finalize a few items that they needed to vote on. Those items were approving the principles and guidelines that kind of governs MTSBA from a 30,000-foot view, and then a fiscal year 23 dues revenue estimate of what it will cost us to be a member of MTSBA. I think this year we were paying close to 18,000. It's going to bump up to 19,000 and change in the ensuing years. And then there was a motion to have Scott Walter serve as the MTSBA president and Tom Biltine to serve as MTSBA vice president. And that is, the motion is to approve acceptance of all four of those issues for MTSBA. And once the board has decided, yes, we support that, or no, then Gwen can go in and actually vote on the Google form, and we'll get that submitted.
Sue, do you know who Scott Walter is? And
I
Tom
do.
Bilton?
Scott is, oh gosh, he's from East Helena, I believe. And, Tom Bilton is from back east, a smaller school. But both of them have been involved much longer than I have been, and they're pretty sharp. And we're actually meeting in person next month, so I'll get to meet them in person.
Very good. Sue, I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Lance. Is
I'll
there-
second.
Who said? Oh, Diane.
Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
Very loudly.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed without objection. Next is banking arrangements. Gwen?
So this spring, for the first time, the traffic ed parents were able to register their students online. And so they paid online as well. And we used a transportation account that we had set up at Glacier Bank for those online payments to be deposited into. The county won't allow us to, electronic access to their accounts for obvious reasons. And so we set up outside bank accounts that are just sweep accounts, basically. The money flows in, and then we transfer it to the county treasurer's office. And we had a transportation account at Glacier Bank, and we thought, well, we think we could manage transportation and traffic ed in the same account. Turns out it was more challenging than we thought it was going to be. So now the transportation account is the traffic ed account, and we need your permission to change the title of that. And then we're going to open a new transportation account at Valley Bank, because we like to have accounts in all the local banks. So I just need, their boards require, the bank requires proof that the board has authorized it at a meeting and is in their minutes. So I need those two items in one motion there.
Thank
Rebecca
you,
Linden,
Gwen.
I so move.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
Sue, I'll be glad to second that.
Lance, thank you for seconding that.
Don't everybody jump in.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed without objection. MHSA membership, Gwen?
So this is the Montana High School Association membership, and if you looked at the document, you see the various sports and activities in which we participate, and there's a membership fee for that. And they also provide liability insurance coverage for athletes and concussion insurance coverage for athletes. Total of right at $15,000. And it requires the board chairman's signature, so it probably requires board approval.
I move we approve membership in MHSA.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
Second.
Will, thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Contracts. Gwen.
First contract is for that elementary camera upgrade that I talked about a little bit in the budget presentation. This is the third year. They have $40,000 available. They've got a quote there for $30,000. They did get 2 quotes, and they preferred the, reviewed those, and the IT department is recommending that this contract with DCS.
So it's all separate, okay, sorry. I move,
Do we have to do each one separate?
Well, it might be easier, because we're
Okay.
gonna have some conversation.
Sorry.
no, I'm really good. I move to approve as presented.
Okay, this is there a second from an elementary trustee?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott. It's been moved and seconded that we accept this motion as presented. All elementary trustees in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next one?
Mike, are you taking this?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So we talked about this in Finance Committee, and the original, request or motion was to approve the expenditure of about $25,000 to, install a new scoreboard at KMS. And KMS has a scoreboard there. It was a hand-me-down from Legends about 20 years ago. It's been around for a long time. It's a, incandescent bulb, board. So like when a light bulb goes out, you get out the ladder and you go out and unscrew the bulb. New technology, wireless, LED. KMS bought a scoreboard for around $10,000, to, put in place of the other one. At the time, they thought we could just mount it to the existing poles that were installed by Flathead Electric years ago, but it does not meet the installation specs of the manufacturer, nor does it meet city code. What it really requires is 2 big steel I-beams, set 8 feet below ground in concrete with rebar cages, et cetera, et cetera. So, we got a bid from Western Neon, and it was $25,000 to mount a $10,000 scoreboard. And the discussion at the, Finance Committee was whether or not this should be paid for out of, the interlocal agreement or out of the general fund. And if it comes out of the general fund, it would primarily come out of the middle school block grant. And I know Trig is here to speak tonight, a little bit, about this. And really, whatever the decision is of the board, moving forward, that may cause a different decision to be made, on the part of the KMS administration as to whether or not to keep the scoreboard or send it back, or a variety of things. Trig, did you want to speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, well, just a little bit. It caught us off guard. When we put the old one in 20-plus years ago, were you working there at middle school?
Oh, yeah.
20 years ago, we actually were out there in the trench, digging the trench for all the power and all that stuff. And I think we had FEC come in and they pro bonoed and put the poles in for us and they mounted it. And so when we bought the new scoreboard, and Micah did say, hey, did you check on, putting the scoreboard up? And I kind of said, well, I'm sure I'll just call FEC. Got a friend over there. I know a guy. They'll hang it for us and we're good to go. I didn't really talk with Greg. We didn't talk, and that would probably have been a wise decision as well. And so we just thought, well, it's a scoreboard. It's about the same size. We'll just change it out, put it up. So then after Greg kind of checked on things, he said there's no way we can do that. He went and got the bid, and it was kind of jaw-dropping that a $10,000 scoreboard costs $25,000 to put up. So yes, I'm coming to beg or grovel for $25,000 to put up this new scoreboard. We've talked about trying to take that out of our black block grant money. I can't do that. Part of it, I just can't rob Peter to pay Paul. Our science department needs that money, our math department needs that money. It's certainly something I can look at the end of the year to see what we've saved that we could maybe apply to it. But I can't do that right now. So I guess I'm asking if you guys could, I don't know if you could just pay for it, or if you would like to flow the middle school loan that we can look at trying to reimburse back. I've talked with Ann, our athletic director, and she's talked about, like this past year, she had about 16,000 in savings that we didn't have to spend because of stipends and COVID and kids not participating as much. So, at any rate, there's a chance we could save some money there. But again, it's not something we're gonna know until the end of the next school year. So I guess I'm asking the board and the finance committee to maybe reconsider our request. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So does it sound like does the middle school have enough money right now to split it? Like to pay for half right now with savings from this year?
Well, our saving,
We didn't
that's
have,
what I thought.
we don't have any savings. We're $300,000 in the negative on the
Yeah.
elementary side. We spent all the money and another $300,000,
Yeah.
so there is no savings.
That 16,000 that Ann saved, and I'm sure that some came out of my block grant too that we just didn't finish. Micah kicked that back to us. You can talk about that if you want to, because
Yeah, so, there were significant savings across the district, especially in the area of activities, and some other, budgeted items that we just didn't end up spending money on. And we actually kicked all that money back to the school. So KMS got a portion, Glacier, Flathead, all the elementary schools, LEC, everybody got a portion of that. What they saved, and then whatever was saved at the district level. And so it took care of a lot of needs and wants. Examples would be new sewing machines, $40,000 for new sewing machines, smart panel TVs, upgrading some technology, updating camera systems, just a variety of things that we normally wouldn't budget for. And so that's where that money ended up going.
and if the principal would have had his act together, I would have paid for the mounting of the scoreboard, and would have gotten that bid and done the homework that we probably should have done. I would have used some of that money then to pay for the scoreboard and the installation.
Trig, where did the scoreboard, what fund did that come out of?
That came out of our activities as well.
That came out of.
Actually, a split between activities and I think my
It was
account.
general fund. It came out of the $150,000 that was given to the middle school in April, when we thought, we're gonna have a little bit of money here, and maybe we should use it to allocate it to the elementaries and the middle school and the high schools, and they could take care of some of the things that were kind of on their
No.
want list.
No, it didn't. Because that 150, we had other stuff in there, and Ann had, between Ann and myself, between our admin account and her activities account, we had the 10,000 or 11,000 there.
So how much was it? It says approximately 10,000. Was it over 10,000?
It was like 11.
Okay,
I wanna-
because we got a policy that any purchase over 10,000 is supposed to come before the board.
And,
Maybe it was 10 then.
the scoreboard was on the list with the other things out of the $150,000. I disagree
was
with
it? Was it?
his
Okay. Maybe it was.
assessment of where it came from, but it's,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was on the list?
and I believe the note on it was that the maintenance department would mount it, because that's what they thought could happen at the time. And it was since then that we found out that, in fact, the maintenance department couldn't mount it. Heather?
So is Western Neon the only bid we've gotten on this?
Yes.
Yes.
We can't find anybody else that's interested in, or capable of doing that work right now.
Okay, because I'm looking at the list of what needs to be done with it, and bid with it. But that was the only company that was interested in looking at it.
Yeah, so basically what you have to do is, you have to have somebody that's, capable of, so they have to make rebar cages we have to countersink them, you got drilling into the ground, you got a core drilling into the ground, probably between 6 and 8 feet deep, depending on what the city wants. The cages have to be very specific, they have to be tagged, so they have to look at them, the city has to approve them. The concrete has to be a certain mix of concrete, the beams have to be a certain beam, because basically what you're putting up is an 18-foot by 11-foot sail.
Okay.
So that has to be, I mean, we could try to find somebody else, maybe out of the area.
Well, I'm just wondering if we can break this apart a little bit and pull out components and not just go with this whole bid with Western Neon, was my only question.
So I'd be very uncomfortable doing this piece by piece, pulling it out.
Ursula?
Okay, so my next question is, it says that the new scoreboard, like with the mounting that we have, it doesn't need city code. Can we put the old one back up, or no, because now that one doesn't need city code?
It's still up,
Oh, it's
Yeah.
still up,
yeah.
so it's like grandfathered in.
I would assume so.
Until it blows down.
So that,
And then you've got a liability on our hands.
Because now we know.
Ursula, that's the problem, that the scoreboard that's there right now is, yeah, the mounting on that is, I mean, you go over and kick it, that's how I went to Trig and said, you kick that thing, and I think this whole thing rattles. Yeah. Mike is the one that put the power in.
Dug the hole?
Coax, it was the coax.
Oh, it's coax, that has,
Yeah.
that's a little stand.
We had to have wire to run from the scoreboard to the,
To install something like that, it has to be done properly.
Okay.
And I understand the whole thought process behind maybe saving some money by doing X, Y, and Z, breaking it into components. But truly, you want somebody to start to finish that thing, because it then becomes a liability factor.
Jack, you talked about that in the finance committee?
Yes.
Not an elementary trustee.
Pardon?
Not an elementary trustee.
Well, as long as we're talking about it coming out of the interlocal agreement, we can all participate in it. And my response is no, the short part of it. And that's why it says it the way it is up there, because I'm still struggling with, so KMS, Glacier, Flathead, they get their block grants, and KMS was $131,000 last year, and then each of those three schools got $150,000 redistributed to them. And yes, like Mike has said, there was needs and there were wants, and I'm assuming some of the wants were paid last year instead of in the future year because of block grants. I don't know the accuracy of that, but I would have to assume that some of that is true, and that it's a building management issue, not a district issue, and that it needs to come out of the future block grants, and that one half out of this year, one half out of next year might be a way to do it, and or wait until April or May when you see where it is and see just how your money is, and then you can decide what to do at that point in time. But to me, we are not budgeting for something like this in the interlocal agreement. We have specific set-asides in there, and then the balance of the money is for, is our fund that we need in case something really happens that we need to have money for. And to me, that's my concern there.
You know, that was a good idea came up in finance, was what about, advertising possibilities? And we do that at the high school level, and what about looking at advertising possibilities at the middle school? And could that be pursued?
Yeah, it could, yes, it could. We never have done that. I'm not sure who, we don't really have big crowds so I'm not sure who would maybe have an interest in advertising, just because, like, it's something that we could pursue, but we never have had, any kind of sponsorship before. I just don't, I don't know what the market is out there, and maybe I'll be surprised, and it's like, yeah, we'll give you X amount of dollars for some signage or something. I just don't know what the market is.
I think I agreed, I was concerned about interlocal funds for this.
Ursula?
I guess alternatively, it feels to me like this is being brought to us as, this thing happened, it didn't quite work out, and that's what makes it seem complicated. But if this proposal was brought to us from Trig, and he said, there is a safety issue that involves grounds, maintenance, and activities, and it needs to be addressed, where does that money come from? I mean, we have people come to us and say, this is a thing that needs to be addressed, and that is the kind of thing that we pay for more regularly out of things like the interlocal agreement. It's a one-time cost that we didn't have set aside because we didn't know that it was an issue. I'm being told that this has to be fixed eventually, and I guess when it comes to using the block grant, I think that the block grant is precious for the other things. I mean, they aren't a huge amount of money for the amount of things that they have to cover, and if we're talking about county codes and safety, that doesn't feel like it's the principal problem.
Are we up to board discussion yet, or are we still asking questions of Trig, or? If we're up to board discussion, I had board discussion stuff. I was at the finance committee meeting, and it did seem like we were talking about how to fund this. And the problem with block grants is it's unfair to the other programs of the school. And the problem with the interlocal is it's a one school issue, not a whole school issue. But I don't think we've ever talked about, do we need to do this, period? I mean, Jack was talking earlier about how we have relatively fixed costs, and we can't really scale back our costs, we have a certain number of employees that we need for a certain number of students. We have, and this is the sort of place that is not necessarily a huge benefit to a lot of people. I mean, I'm wondering if we shouldn't be talking, yes, if we need to take down the old scoreboard because it's not safe, and is this what the only thing, I mean, can we go back to an old piece of plywood and a kid putting, I mean, I'm sorry, but do we need a wireless scoreboard? $35,000 is not a minor amount of money. That's a lot of sewing machines, that's a lot of math contests, that's a lot of, I can't remember which other block grant things were, but, yeah, I mean, I do think we need to think not just how to fund this, but if this is our highest priority of where we want to put money.
Micah, do you have a comment?
Well, one of the things that we kind of talked about a little bit, and, the scoreboard that currently exists there was a hand-me-down from the old Legend Stadium. And, when Trig looked at replacing it, he tried to find something that was of similar size. It is grossly oversized for a middle school football game, no question. There's probably more blank space on that scoreboard than there are numbers and lights. But that being said, even if he had bought a scoreboard half the size, you'd still have to put in the two posts, the concrete, the cage, you're gonna have to have a contractor who's licensed, bonded, and insured, because they're putting, their workmanship on, I mean, there's a reason for some of that cost. So whether it had been a smaller scoreboard or the one that he got, you were still gonna have to do something, to correct and fix, what currently could be a liability at some point. That's just a thought as well.
And I would say that when I think we could have gotten a smaller one for, I think the next one, the next one that would have worked was around $8,000, $7,500 or $8,000. But we also wanted to kind of match it up with the two poles that were there, so it would fit on those two poles that we can't now use anyways. So that was kind of part of the rationale when we got the scoreboard. And please understand too, this is nothing personal. I mean, this was jaw dropping to us, caught us totally off guard. If it was like $10,000, I would say, yep, between Ann and I, between her activities and my admin, we could cover that. But, yeah, like I said, 25,000 was just jaw-dropping. And like I said, but I certainly am not taking this personal from you guys at all either. If we need to, we can wait. And I mean, we'll just kind of see how much money we have at the end of the year, and we can look at trying to do an installation in the spring based on what we can save during the course of the year.
Jack?
So I'm gonna be at odds with Rebecca, because to me, the only decision that the board should be making for here is how it should be paid, not whether the scoreboard is necessary or not, because that's part of, delegation of responsibility and authority. And that's the purpose of the block grants, that they have the discretion to spend it as they want, and we should not be questioning it. The only question in my mind is whether it should come from the interlocal agreement or come out of their block grant. And for me, it's coming out of the block grant, because I don't want to get in the decision of the type of scoreboard or anything like that. And their city code, if they were doing it in the county, codes don't exist, so the construction costs would be less. It's that simple. And the integrity of the installation in both places would probably be the same. But that's just the way it goes. So to me, I'm not questioning the scoreboard, I'm not questioning the installation, it's just where the money funds it. And I would move to approve the contract with Western Neon with, it being paid out of the block grant in some kind of arrangement, either 1 year or 2 years.
But you're a high school trustee.
Yeah, you're not, but,
Oh, you're
Yeah.
correct, thank you. So that's, disregard what I
Don't put
said,
that.
unless I say it's not gonna be paid out of the block grant, I could cover it that way.
So I could move that we pay for it out of the interlocal agreement, because that's
Well-
what I think we should do.
so Trig, you talked about a loan, and the proposition that Jack had made that I thought was made to finance too was
That was a
2 years, was putting some of the money from the interlocal, knowing it would come out of the block grant this year and next year. Is that not a long and term enough loan for what you're considering, or what's the issue? No, I'm just saying, you said loan, he said loan, and yet you guys seem to be at odds, so I'm trying to find out what's going on here.
I guess for me, I don't mind trying to use my block grant, but I don't want to use it now. I need to get through the school year or most of the school year and kind of see how our expenses go, to see, okay, I've got 25,000 left in my block grant that I can use towards it, or I've got half of it.
But you said if it was 10,000, it wouldn't be a big deal, so 10,000 this year and 10 next?
Right, and like, yes, and if this bill was $10,000, I probably would take 5,000 from my admin, and Ann could find 5,000 from her activities, and we would be able to swing that cost.
Okay, technically, we do have a motion on the table.
Oh.
Would you, could you,
Well, no, it hasn't been seconded, so it died.
I know.
Right, we can repeat it.
well,
I can repeat it.
yeah,
Yeah, I move that we approve the contract with Western Neon Signs to install the new scoreboard to be paid out of the interlocal agreement.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott. Now we have board discussion, so,
So I assume everyone can participate in this, since we're talking about the interlocal agreement.
Yes.
yes,
All right,
yes.
now we can.
Any discussion?
Well, I'm not sure we actually have a problem here with the block, I mean, if we did move to a block grant one, because, Jack said 2 years, which could be 10,000 this year, 15 next year, and Trig said 10,000 is fine,
But
so we might.
That wasn't the motion, the
Yeah.
motion was
Right,
to
yeah, no,
report
I'm
out the
saying that-
interlocal agreement.
We might, everybody might be okay with the block grant thing that was okayed in finance already, but maybe not.
So I think
Okay.
Jack has some I love it, yeah, I think Jack has some very good points, and I would agree with Jack on this issue that, it's really, it's not, the details, we don't need to get into the details, and, the interlocal agreement would be better saved for other things, and this would be falling into that block grant, so. I'd agree with Jack.
Jeff?
Well, and I think if everybody's listening to Trig, he gave an answer to the question where he'll just take a wait and see attitude and figure out how to cover it, because the way, cash flow can work, he can cover it in the springtime with some block grant money and cover it in July with the balance of block grant money. So I think the answer's already there, and we don't have to address it in the interlocal agreement, and it's an administrative function, it's not a board function.
Exactly, I'll agree, I'm hearing the same thing.
Any other discussion?
Well, but I thought what you said at finance was loan money out of the interlocal agreement to be paid back from the black grants over 2 years. Did I misunderstand that? I might have misunderstood. So it could happen now. It's not sitting in a box all winter.
That would be, well, the key is it would not come out of the interlocal agreement. And if we say, if a majority says no to this, then the elementary has to decide what motion to go with. And if they say it comes out of the block grant, then it's an administrative function to figure out how to address that. It's not a board function. And we don't need to be concerned about the cash flow of it. That'd be administration figuring that out. Because it doesn't impact the interlocal agreement, it just impacts the general fund. Unless one wants to correct me on that.
Oh, they can deal with it, good.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? So the motion is to approve the $25,461 to be paid
Actually, scroll down to the next one on there.
from,
Yeah, that's the motion right there that I believe Ursula,
yeah,
yeah. So that's what we're voting on, is that one right there.
okay.
With the exception of the language about earmarked, because there is no earmarked money for scoreboards. We could just strike that piece of it, because there isn't any.
Call for the question.
Okay. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye. And this is all.
Sorry, is this elementary only, or is this?
Elementary only.
No, it's,
But it's on the
it's on your
interlocal.
local, it's on everybody.
Everybody.
This is local,
This
everybody.
is everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
So what were the totals?
7 to 2, 6 to 3.
Okay. So motion did not pass by a vote of 6 to 3.
Sue, I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract with Western Neon Sign Group to install the new scoreboard paid out of the block grant over 2 years.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Diane. Moved and seconded.
So on
Any
board discussion,
discussion?
how does this work over 2 years? Like, Neon, presumably Neon isn't gonna say, we'll do the work now, or, does this mean they do it now and they get paid more for the next years, or does this mean that, they wait, when they finally have enough money saved, we call Western Neon, and the price might have gone up at that point and all that stuff?
Gwen, you could probably answer this better than I, but generally speaking, I would say that we would cash flow it out of the general fund right now.
Oh,
Part of the money would come out of Trig's block grant, half of it this year, and the other half would come out next year. But all of it would be paid for out of this year's general fund.
okay.
And we could work with Trig at the end of the year to see what he has, and if we have to adjust, if it's another year, or if he has enough to cover it all and be done with it, he might prefer to do that, but, yeah, I totally agree with Mike's suggestion.
Trig, did you have a?
Well, I mean, the other thing with that, I haven't explored, but we could just look at sending the scoreboard back. I mean, there'll be a nominal fee that I would pay, and then we look at attacking it at a later date.
And I would say that's your prerogative. But it's your block grant, you get to decide how you want to spend it. But this would be one option for you. Yep.
Will they take it back? Will they take it back?
That's not our problem. That's administrative function.
Yeah, they would probably take it back.
Sue, I'd call for the question.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of this motion?
And this is only elementary?
This is only elementary. Okay, all in favor, scroll back up. To approve the contract with Western Neon to install the new scoreboard, taking it out of the block grant for, over the next 2 years. All in favor, elementary trustees?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay.
Thank you, Trey.
Okay, Gwen, the next one?
So the last one is to approve an agreement with the city of Kalispell to share in the cost of a sidewalk project at Russell Elementary. And it's actually a contract with the city. The costs are there, if you scroll down just a little bit more, Kelly. Project at $59,000, school district share of $33,000, and the city will share of $25,000. And what we're approving here is actually the agreement with the city.
Any questions?
Sue, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Scott. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. This is elementary only.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. District-wide contracts. Gwen?
First one is an agreement with the 11th Judicial District for operation of the Academic Transition Center contract, and it comes with a grant of, so the total cost of the program is $161,000. The grant is $65,000, and so the district share on this is $96,000. We've operated this program for 8 years. Been a very successful program, and so we would recommend that we approve it for another year.
Okay,
I'll move that we accept the, grant as proposed.
thank you, Will.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Thank you, Ursula. Moved and seconded. All in favor, all trustees, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next one?
Kirby Environment, and that was for asbestos removal here at Flathead High School. In the main office remodel, some carpet was removed, and it required some asbestos abatement. And we just want to make sure that we have all the appropriate contracts and board approval in place, because asbestos can be a touchy topic.
And the work's already been done.
Yes.
We had to do it, Jack.
I know, that was just a fun editorial.
Okay, thanks, Gwen.
I'll move to approve the asbestos abatement contract.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second?
Seconded?
Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next one, Gwen?
And so the next one will make a lot of elementary children happy if you approve the pizza bid. And it's actually a very good bid because it's $2 a pizza less than the other bid. So we're bringing forward a Domino's pizza bid for $6.75 per pizza for whole wheat crust. And then the only bid we received on the milk products for next year was from Medigold Dairy. And those prices are exactly the same as they were last year, which is almost unheard of. So milk and pizza for everybody.
Can we get a
It's actually,
three-year contract?
you know, it's almost $300,000 in, local business, so
That's great.
good thing.
And you added on pizza for board meetings, right?
I didn't, and I didn't even get a pizza when they brought in the bid. That is the one I'm gonna remember next year.
They wanted to do a bid, but not a pizza?
I know, yeah.
Okay. Anyone comfortable making that motion?
Is this elementary only?
No, it's district-wide.
It's district?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Will.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rebecca. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. All right, Gwen, you're off the hook now.
I
Whitefish
am.
Community Grant. Sarah, this is an action item.
Mike and Sue, do you, I thought.
You can
Mike
use that
option.
microphone right there.
This makes me more comfy. You guys are always welcoming, but standing with the mic is not as comfortable. So am I just pressing this? All right, and Heather, nice to meet you. This is the first time face-to-face. Welcome to the board. Thanks. I have two action items, in front of you, and both were vetted through finance. The first is to approve a grant, application, for the HEART program with the Whitefish Community Foundation. It's in the amount of $10,000. And the way that we plan on using this is, a few months ago, we inherited a grant from the Sparrow's Nest, in the amount of about $186,000, which we're in the process of, getting over it for us. But really it's to create a teen, and young adult drop-in center at the Heart Locker. And so we're able to use an in-kind match. And Gwen's office came up with some numbers, and so we were really close to meeting the match that's required for this grant, but we were about $10,000 shy. And so by approving this application, we will be able to cover the match that's required for this grant. Any questions?
Sarah, are you applying for the grant? Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So in the past, I've applied for grants, and then I was reminded that I need board approval before I apply for grants. And
Thank you.
so, yes, this is just seeking approval to actually apply for this $10,000 grant.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the Whitefish Community Foundation's Kids Fund Grant application as presented.
Thank you, Lance. Will, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you. And I think there's really good odds that we'll get it, which will be awesome. Yep. The Sparrow's Nest grant, we anticipate having it transfer in early August. And so, it'll be great to see us be able to offer that service in the community. The next is a list of several grants. We've really tried to get, contracts, and MOUs that we've tried to get on a cycle. They're all under this special services umbrella. And what they all have in common is their partnerships with organizations that either provide direct services to students or indirectly allow us to provide services to students. Some have financial bearing and others do not. They just are formalizing our partnership. In some areas, we've saved money, in others, prices have gone up, but overall, there's no substantial changes to the contracts that are financially binding. I know you've had a chance to look at each of these, and I know it's getting late, and so my thought is I can go over them one by one, or if the board has specific questions on any of the individual contracts that you have.
I have a question. So this is different from the Heart Locker.
Yeah, so that was a different agenda, item. This is a completely
This is
separate.
something else under your umbrella.
Correct, yep,
All right, I got it.
yep. These are a variety of contracts, with different organizations that we collaborate with to provide direct services to students. And some of those are dictated through the IEP, so like occupational therapy services or more mobility services. And others are to allow us to seek reimbursement for students through Medicaid. And so there is a wide range of contracts that are here, but they all, are partnerships with organizations that allow us to provide direct or indirect services to students.
And you're perfectly fine with the services you've been receiving from all of these?
We've actually had great partnerships, and I feel really grateful that we were able to continue with these folks, many of whom have been fair. Like I said, if costs did go up, it made sense for what's happening in the market. They weren't inflated too high. Like, for instance, our occupational therapist that we work with, her costs went up $2 per hour. But in the scheme of things, when you look at rates for occupational therapists, she's right in the average. And so I'm totally comfortable with what I've presented. Jack?
If I remember all this right, none of this comes out of the general fund. These are all reimbursed funds to cover all these costs.
Correct. Really, the only special ed costs that come out of the general fund are some of the salaries and benefits. We don't budget any other costs in the general fund.
Now, the only one that I focused on was the
CSTT.
Yeah, CSTT, just because of the legislation and OPI and DH, or DT, HSS.
HHS.
What's
It's a mouthful.
Acronyms, yeah.
And specifically the one with KRH, because I'm just not comfortable with KRH all the time. But when Mike sent me the amendment, section D satisfies me, except for the fact that we could be overcharged for 30 days, have to pay that liability. So it's not so much this agreement, but in future ones, I'd just like to see a clause in there that says the fees charged will be never in excess of
The reimbursement.
yes.
Yeah, and I think actually many districts, because we're still in the midst of figuring out what that new process will look like, many districts have talked about that very same clause. And they actually said, before you guys come into any new agreement, make sure you talk with your attorneys, because we're talking, CSET, teams provide therapeutic services to kids in all of our schools. And as Gwen said, we have given them the space in the past, but really they're billing Medicaid for these services. So when we're talking, Medicaid liability and what we can bill or not bill, we just want to make sure we're doing everything by the letter of the law. So simply throwing a clause in the amendment probably wouldn't be wise at this point, but waiting to see what is the billing rate going to change to, what is the process. We've even consulted with Lori DeLong, the person who does our current Medicaid billing, what's legit from the Fed standpoint. So I think this one-year amendment truly just allows us to keep our CSET teams in the district until folks figure out what the new process is. But then, Jack, the language to protect the district, I think we should absolutely look at when we sign a full agreement with them.
And that's where I would look to go, because the only difference between the language in, section 7 of the amendment and the original contract is just paragraph D, which is good, because all the other ones just talk about, changes in the program can change the contractual arrangements. But if there's but it's nowhere does it say that, that they're, prevented from charging us in excess of the scheduled fees, and that's my concern right there. But the 30-day clause will work for right now, because it limits our liability to whatever, unless they get really nuts. But their history has not been that way, which is comforting. That's just a future consideration.
Yeah, and weighing out the liability of that potential 30-day, which we don't have reason to believe that they'd ever treat us in that manner based on our long partnership with them, versus us not having CSCT teams because we didn't sign the one-year contract. I think the liability is much greater, that kids would suffer and we'd see major blowouts if we did not have those therapeutic services in the school. So when I weigh out those risks, I think my recommendation would be that the board would sign the one-year contract until we get more information.
Any other questions?
Are all these separate motions?
No, I think we can, just one. Anybody comfortable making the motion?
Sure.
I move we approve this list of MOUs as presented.
Thank you, Diane. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next up, approval of the handbooks. Callie?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeking approval of the one elementary handbook and the middle school handbook on the elementary side. So this would be a trustee elementary vote. The elementary schools use one common generic handbook, and then they will send emails, newsletters, etc., to their parent community with the specifics of their school. But they, a couple of years ago, agreed to have one common handbook.
I feel comfortable making the motion to approve the 2021-2022 handbooks for the 6 elementary schools and KMS.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lance and Ursula. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, elementary trustees, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed unanimously. Next one, Kelly?
Thank you. On the high school side, it's a tad bit more complicated. No surprise. Each high school has 3 different handbooks in front of you. Each high school has an activity handbook for the coaches, an activity handbook for the students, and then they also have the student and parent handbook. And you're looking at 6 different handbooks in total. And there's a handy chart that you can zero in on the big changes. And one change, just to highlight, is the attendance incentive at both high schools. Both high schools have agreed to suspend that for this current year. And Mike, did you want to make any comments towards that, or basically it boils down to supporting good health practices?
Yeah, Callie and I met with the high school administrators. They actually wanted to have the incentive in place, for this year. And, my thought process on that is, being in the middle or tail end, who knows what part of the pandemic, it didn't make sense from a public health standpoint. And I also reached out to Joe Russell, our county health director, you know, and we had a conversation years ago when H1N1 was a thing. He actually contacted the school board and asked that we suspend that policy at that point, and that would be his recommendation again at this point in time. Also reached out to some of the local pediatricians, Dr. Hybor, Dr. Dykstra, and got kind of the same feedback. They would actually say that policy should never be in place to begin with. It just promotes bad health habits, encouraging kids to come to school sick. On the flip side of that, being a former high school principal and actually bringing forward the Glacier High School attendance policy as it currently exists, there's also another side of this, and that is, how do you promote and encourage good attendance within your school system? And we're not talking about trying to encourage students who are sick to come to school, but trying to encourage students who might otherwise choose to go to Big Mountain for the day, or go to the beach, or do whatever it is, get their hair cut, get, you know, a pedicure, whatever it may be. Kids have lots and lots of reasons. And so, you know, it was part of a broader discussion and was kind of brought back and forth. But again, my recommendation to the board, if they had brought that forward and said, this is what we want to do, I would have said, I don't support that. I think we need to be more cautious and optimistic. I think we need to take a different look at attendance in light of how things have changed, and do kids actually need to have, you know, as we refer to, butt in chair seat time for all of their classes. It's going to open up a larger discussion. But it was also warned that be prepared to perhaps hear from parents and or students about, or teachers about, the lack of attendance incentive. You know, the schools can definitely show you some data. Pre-incentive, you know, 80 to 85% attendance rate, average daily attendance rate, and then post-incentive, 95%. So it's a much bigger issue, but just wanted to share that. But that was kind of a point of contention, but I think we worked through it.
Hey, Mike, we've been through the pandemic now, and we've had a whole year of remote learning. Doesn't that change a little bit the butts in chairs calculation? I mean, I've got coworkers who are working sick, but they're doing it from their bedroom.
Yeah, it does. And I think if you look at, there's going to be a policy coming up, 2050, that will come in front of the board. And one of the things that it actually stipulates in the way that NTSBA wrote the policy is that students would have the option for remote education, regardless of whether or not the district had a rec program. But that you would actually, the teachers and students would figure out a way to continue to provide those educational services, even if someone was quarantined, they weren't even sick. You know, 'cause that's still a real possibility that staff and students are gonna end up quarantined next year with positive cases.
The other significant change that you will see happens to be on the activity side, and that is where our home and private school students are eligible to be in activities. And that's a significant change which both high schools and administrators wholeheartedly support. One of the things that is different this year that we are working through is the number of potential board changes that are working through the system, and we've never had as many. And the three of us have gone through these, and we actually today came up with the ones that are urgent, and with the lens of we need to have discussions with school administrators about these because it's going to change the way they are doing business. And then we have kind of the middle of the road urgent. Once we get the urgent done, then we move to those. And then there's actually some policies that will come in front of you that, from an administrative perspective, they aren't urgent. They would just flow through and we're good to go, and administrators won't change their. And then we still have another group that we need to address to make sure that we are complying with those. So this is a very, very unique year, and some of the policies that will be flowing through, we're still working on what it's going to actually look like in the facilities, in the schools. How are we going to do this? How are our counselors going to take it into account? What does the funding look like from Gwen's perspective? So there's just a lot of detail, and I've never seen it to this level. There's just piles of detail on this stuff, so.
Kelly, with the change of law, with the change of law that says that we have to, allow homeschooling and, private school students in our activities, which I think that we've done some of, certainly in this last year, but probably before that too. What about other public high schools? I mean, what about I don't know, if Evergreen doesn't have a band program, or I'm always cognizant of offering things to students not in our district that were not a Glacier student who wanted in high school. I mean, I know we do that to some extent academically, but what about on the activities?
Michael, would you like to answer that?
I would love to, because
No.
Gwen sent me the full text of the law, which I had seen briefly, and then studied a little bit more in anticipation of a question like this. They actually, so regardless of, whether private or homeschool, they actually have to reside in the district, that they have to live inside that district boundary. So a student at Evergreen couldn't come and take advantage of an activity unless they were actually a resident of the district. So they'd have to belong to Kalispell Elementary School.
So a Glacier student in high school, a Glacier student joining a Flathead team or something like that?
No, they would have to go to their zone district.
Oh, because those are out of, because even, that's outside of our.
So once
okay.
you get to the Evergreen, you brought up is K-8.
Right, okay.
But at the high school level, if it was a student who lived, say, in Silverbrook subdivision and was a homeschool student, they could access Glacier High School
But not,
activities.
gotcha. Interesting.
I've also got a question. So if a student takes advantage of this and participates in a couple of our programs, maybe even 3 students, do we get some reimbursement from OPI for this?
Yes, and if it's a duration of 18 weeks or more, which you would consider to be like a quarter of a school year, we get 1/16 of an A&B. $500.
So Micah, if a homeschool student wanted to join the band at Flathead,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a full school year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, so you get,
Funding for that also.
we would.
but only the extracurricular part, so it would be pep band.
Correct. Yep. So, and one of the things, you know, I think from a school district perspective, and especially a public school, if we are the, what was the term you used earlier in your presentation? We're the gold standard. I would hope that if we have kids that come to participate from homeschool, they also are gonna see the benefits of public school, and it might change some minds about this is where I wanna be. So.
One of the policies that will be coming in front of you has to do with part-time enrollment and how that looks and what some of the rules and regulations are around that, which will answer your question, a little bit on what do we do with a homeschool student that wants to just take a band class. And the rules are real specific in here on what we can and can't do with that student. And that's a good example of then what we need to do is to make sure that our building administrators, our counselors, anybody that would come in contact with that student knows how to handle it so we don't misstep on following the regulations.
Lance, did you have a comment?
If we can move on to, I noticed a couple things in the handbooks that I'd like to see addressed. And I know the handbooks have so much information, it's pretty amazing, and you can just see each legislative session they add more to it. But one thing, we approved a non-discrimination policy back in August 2015. It's still not accurately reflected in the Flathead High School's activities handbooks or coaches handbook. They left out the 7 key words that we spent hours on. Gender identity, sexual orientation, or gender expression. Looks like they got it at Flathead High School though, but not in the coaches handbook or in the activities.
So they did get it in the student
Yes.
one, but then it didn't move over to the activity handbook?
Nope,
Okay.
or the coaches handbook.
Okay.
So we're making progress.
And Glaciers, I think is okay.
Glaciers was good, although they had a weird edit in one of them. And the parent student, at one of them, it said,
You're retired, you got more time.
That's right. Stereotypical notions of masculinity, they left out the or femininity, just to be consistent with what they said earlier. It's not exactly the verbiage we use in 3210, but I think it's the spirit of it, and maybe the words are even better. Notions of masculinity. And it's just like they edited out or femininity. It was in the previous note of it, but in the second one, it wasn't there. And this is kind of nitpicky, but I know Nicole Heyer has moved on, and maybe, I think, as the homeless school liaison, I think the activities in the coaches one, they said, noted her, maybe it should be Casey Driscoll. And then also in the Flathead one, we've got 16 Montana AA schools instead of 14.
Whose handbook was that, I'm sorry?
The Flathead High School's activities and coaches handbook.
And was Casey Driscoll in both, or just in?
She was in neither, it was Nicole Heyer.
I know, but it was both JGents and FHS that were there?
Nope, it was Flathead High Schools. Yep. Yep. No, Glacier High Schools all look good. So, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope next year I can sit in front of you and we will have those handbooks perfect on the, language. I'm
Yep.
gonna keep trying.
All right. We got one down.
There's
I
a
had-
lot in those.
Yeah. I admit that I did not fully get through all through 246 pages. I only had 3 days. I'm not that fast. But, I did try to think about, nitpicky stuff I just sent to Callie. But one kind of overall issue in the coach's handbook overall is the distinction between athletics and activities and being careful in that language, because that does, to me, send a message which is about vision, about board, and, about a board vision for how the schools are inclusive. And it does fairly often in those books, the handbook for coaches how to coach particularly, which is awesome, by the way, that we have that. But, it really is not very careful in using activities when it means activities and athletics when it means athletics. Because there's a bunch of places where it says like, activities need to have concussion testing, and that's true of athletics, or it says athletics needs to, things that are for all activities. And just being aware and conscious of that, I think is something we need to bring into our consciousness. So that was just kind of the, what is it you say, like, say 40,000-foot view of it, was that that's something I think we should be aware of in general. And the other 40,000 view moment of it was, religion. There's one place in the elementary, which I know we've already voted on, and one place in, a Flathead student handbook where they specifically mention a reason for something being because of religious preferences of parents. And I'm not sure we need to go there. I'm not sure that it's not enough, like in elementary handbook, it was about celebrations. And it says, if you don't want to have your child in a celebration because of religious preferences. And I'm like, you know what? We could just say if you don't want to have your child in a celebration. We don't need to say why we think parents might be thinking this. And it happens again in Flathead High School and possibly Glaciers. I didn't see it in Glaciers. About Wednesday evenings, saying we try not to schedule activities on Wednesday evenings so that they can get to church service, I think, or I think it specifically says church service. And I'm like, we can just say, you know, there's often conflicts Wednesdays. We try not to schedule after 7:45. I'm not sure we need, to put it in there that it's about religion. But maybe that's just my 40,000 view. I don't know if that's everyone else's 40,000 view.
Good point. Any other comments, questions? Okay, this is an action item, so is anybody comfortable making a motion? Ursula?
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 handbooks, all of them, with the suggestions for edits that were made.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ursula and Diane. Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Moving on to Safe Schools app, an action item.
Yep. So, last year, it started, with Mark Plateau when he was superintendent, worked with school resource officers, administrators. We, agreed to use a Safe Schools reporting app. It was a tip line. It could be to report unsafe behavior, it could be used to report something that was going on outside of school. And with that first app that was vetted, it was actually piloted in some other communities. Our SROs went and looked at it, they thought it was great. One of the other communities was Polson, smaller community, not as many schools. Anyway, long story short, that app has some deficiencies. One of the big ones is that if a student were to report something using that app, or a parent, every administrator in the district gets that. We don't need all that. But it was also contacted by Jeff McDonald, who is the coordinator for Montana Safe Schools through the University of Montana. And he said, hey, we've got an app, and we actually think it will solve that problem. We're trying to get more schools involved. And Corey Clark and Justin Turner went and previewed the demo of the app. It kind of resolved some of those issues where we can actually pinpoint a particular student to a particular school, and it goes to the appropriate people and is being handled and dealt with in a timely fashion. What you have in front of you is just an MOU. I did have Rich Lawrence and his team look at it because I know you guys love reading contracts as much as I do. And there was some techno jargon in there, not everything that I completely understood, but we also want to make sure that anything we do that involves online and could potentially contain any identifiable information, that organization or that company is protecting that. And so that they looked at it, they said, yep, we're in compliance with Montana law, with our board policies, with our standard operating procedures. So no cost to the district. This is a grant-funded application, and would like to see this approved.
That's called terms of service.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody comfortable making a motion?
So made.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Policy update.
I'm gonna get a big drink of water, take a deep breath.
I think this is an easy one, just because of what's in parentheses behind each of them, whether it's required or new. And it's the third reading, and we can just move right on with it.
I would agree, but if you would like to go through each one of these that are up for third reading, it just takes one motion to approve all of them. We have talked about them in, policy committee at length. We've also had them in front of the board. This is the third reading, and I don't feel obligated to go through each one, but if you would like to, or talk about one in particular, Sue will control that discussion.
Does anybody have a question about anything in particular on these policies? This is the third reading, so we have talked about them before.
Sue, I just have one question. I think it's on maybe the fingerprint background. We specifically listed Tracy Scott. I'm just curious, do we have to list a specific person?
Yes.
That means if when Tracy leaves in 25 years, and we hire a new,
We would
25 years,
we would be able to update that.
we'd have to come bring it back in front of the board and update it.
I don't know if we would actually have to, unless something else changed in it. I think just changing a person's name. There's actually quite a few policies that have been coming forward that have specific name designations, like Title IX, where we identify particular people in a building. I don't know if it changes the substance of the policy. It just changes the name of the person who's in charge of that.
Thank
I
you.
spoke to Tracy about that on some of the policies, and she said, no, we just fill in a form, we don't have to reapprove it or anything, it's just a little form.
Anybody comfortable?
I move approval of the third reading of the policies as presented.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'll be glad to second that.
Thank you, Lance. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the policy updates on this final reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed without objection. Okay, then we have got the policies with second reading. Micah, any?
Yep. We have second reading of these. I'm sorry, it is 9 o'clock.
Your name's on here.
I know.
On the top of page 3 to 5.
Yeah. The one thing I will editorialize just a little bit on the second reading and first reading of these policies, and then we have a whole slew of brand new ones to work through. And Callie kind of touched on this, but we are spending a significant amount of time administratively reviewing these and looking to bring input or suggestions, and would ask that you trust that as I do this, these were all developed by attorneys, that all based on recent changes in law or some sort of procedure, and it impacts a lot of different departments, whether it's the Department of Public Health and Human Services, OPI, legislative, administrative rules, Montana, et cetera. And so we look at these and we'll bring forward our best recommendation. And what I would ask is that if you have interest in any of the policies, you're always free to join policy committee. We love talking about it. But then also, if there's anything for the group, bring them up and we'll certainly talk about them.
Second reading shouldn't require a motion.
Doesn't.
No, just,
And I'd just like to throw in a comment that, policy 2050, is pretty exciting. I mean, it really is charting the innovative, education that we're talking about in the coming years, so. If you haven't read it thoroughly, I think the second paragraph, it's worth reading.
good comment, Lance. Any other questions? Then let's go on to the policy updates, first reading.
Sue, it said there was a motion there. Jack says it doesn't need it, but it's like on the thing, it said suggested motion.
Doesn't it say, just motion unneeded, that's what it's supposed to say.
It said to move on to the third reading. I thought it said that at the bottom, right?
I don't.
Well, it's,
It's
That's not an action, yeah.
it's,
Okay, okay, so we could just.
Yeah, we're just,
Okay. And I just read it, so I
yeah,
don't think.
yes, you're right, yeah.
I did say that.
Close your eyes.
Okay.
Okay, first reading, Mike.
So first reading, a number of these policies are really speaking to some of the changes legislatively and or procedurally. We just experienced a year of a pandemic, and how schools respond and treat certain things like communicable diseases. There were some bills that were passed, you know, and one that I would think of in particular, really has to do with whether or not you can exclude a child from school who has, illness. And really what it does is it takes a situation with COVID where the county health department is empowered to quarantine and or, isolate an individual who's either sick or has been exposed, and that applies. So if next school year starts and we have a student who's identified as a close contact, county health department says, we've identified them, they need to quarantine. Schools have a responsibility to make sure that that student doesn't come to school or doesn't participate in an activity, regardless of what the parent says. That is what the county health department is empowered to do. So some of these policies start to address those particular issues. The breastfeeding in the workplace actually includes students. Before it was employee only, and now it addresses that. And supplement, not supplant, is something that we've always known. It is a part of the federal regulations of Title I, that you can only use Title I funds to supplement, not supplant. So you couldn't say, hey, we're not going to pay for this teacher out of the general fund this year, we're going to pay for it out of Title I. It doesn't work that way. So it's just a clarification. That's how we've always operated regularly.
Any questions, comments on any of these particular ones? Please come to policy committee if you.
I have one quick question. I didn't, on the one about being able to quarantine, does the school, if the school identifies the close contacts, do they have that authority, or only if it goes also through the county?
As long as we've been deputized.
Okay, we've been deputized. Okay.
Yep. And we did have an agreement to be deputized through last school year. We have not made that arrangement for this year. But we do assist in identifying who potential close contacts are, in the county health department's contact tracers would actually make that final determination.
Okay, next we have the consent agenda, elementary only. There's a couple things on there. Micah, do you want to address anything? Fundraising, purchases?
That tells me there's an elementary trustee that's not quick enough to just jump right into it.
I would move that we pass the consent agenda.
I would second that.
Thank you, Lance and Diane.
Last time I did that, it got super complicated, but it was like, wait.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Okay,
I move the high school consent agenda.
I would second that.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, informational items and reports. Trustee reports. First thing I want to do is I want to take this time to remind everybody about our Gyroscope Award. And this is a traveling award amongst the trustees. And the Gyroscope Award, if you were not here last time, is the fact that some things we do are constant, they never change, our core values. some things are changing. And that's the inside of a gyroscope. And a gyroscope is very important for keeping, a vessel on course. Okay. So the first recipient was Lance, and he gets the honor of sending the gyroscope to the next recipient. So Lance, I'm gonna call on you first.
So, I think as a trustee, it starts to dawn on you that there's 6,000 students in our district, and there's 800 employees, and we are in a leadership, volunteer leadership position of this fine institution. And it's a big deal to put your name on the ballot, and put your name forward and say, I'm willing to step up. And, so I'd like to welcome Heather officially. That's a big deal. And I think when you look at the core value, it's putting students first. And so I think that is something we all share. And so Heather, I hope you are as successful as a trustee as I feel I have been. And, best of luck.
All right.
Nicely
And next meeting, you have the honor of passing it on. Thank you.
And one of the responsibilities is trying to remember to bring it. And not lose it between it.
And that's in 3 weeks.
Yeah. So trustee reports. Scott,
I don't have one. I also don't have one.
Diane,
Nothing to report.
Well, mine is not very big, but, there is a group of high school students right now at a Rotary Youth Leadership Camp, and they signed up through I know at Flathead, I think there are kids from Glish too, but at Flathead, they got involved in that through a club called Interact, which is Michelle Payne, who's the leader of that club, and it's a youth volunteer community involvement club, and they're at the Rotary camp, and I gotta say, that group of kids, they looked like future leaders. They were a really nice group of kids getting on that bus.
good. Heather,
Actually, I had, my son was able to attend 2 of the Flathead, camps. He did the basketball camp and then the soccer camp that was run all by the students and the coaches. And I was very impressed. Actually, my oldest son helped run the soccer camp as well. And a great group of students stepped up and they did a great job with these young kids. And I was very impressed. I love that the little ones walked away with just this pride of becoming a Flathead Brave one day. It was pretty neat.
No report.
Nothing for me.
No report.
I have no report. Admin?
Where do you want to start?
Ladies first.
No report.
Must be late.
I don't know if there's anything we haven't talked about.
Yeah. Oh, we could come up with some more, believe me. Micah?
Well, I would just say, it has been, amazing to have Matt up at the central office, hit the ground running. He's got great things going on, great part of the team, and, great hire for our district. So it's been good so far. We'll see. I still feel the tryout every day too.
Okay.
So, Matt, were your board meetings entertaining also?
I think, yes, I think all board meetings are entertaining, but, I think right now we just have some really interesting and exciting times in education across the state. I'm, as much as, the policy is a lot to get through, every district is dealing with what we're dealing with, and that's, at a minimum, probably 50 policies that are just changed based on the last legislative session, and then you have your normal updates. I was joking with Mike, I said, you should find the, 17 policies that we're not talking about, and just put them on the agenda so that we can get them all. Because we're really close. I mean, this is just a, maybe a once in a lifetime overhaul of policies all at once. And so it's a really exciting opportunity, it's a really busy time, but good stuff. And I'm excited to see, how this plays out in the next couple of years.
That board policy book must be a little bit 50 would be quite.
Okay, we've got just a couple things left on our agenda. A safe return to schools and continuity of service plan. Micah.
Yep, so standing, agenda item, and I do want to update the board just briefly. You've probably heard some things, or maybe are hearing, things in the community, regarding the, updated CDC guidelines. A few things some takeaways if you get into the document, but, you know, they identified that in-person learning is important, and that it should be a priority, some things that we've already, embraced. But one of the things that kind of keeps coming up is the mask issue again, and whether or not masks should be required for those who are not fully vaccinated, in schools, and that is the recommendation of the CDC. That, along with other layers of mitigation strategy. They will tell you that the first line of defense and best line of defense at this point and best strategy is get vaccinated. But then other things that we've done and are working on and will continue to do, things like addressing your ventilation systems. We've got MERV 10 filters and everything. We've updated and upgraded some of those things. We still have hand sanitizer coming out of our ears. We're going to continue to do those kind of things. We're going to continue to disinfect and clean and fog the rooms. We're going to continue to encourage social distancing. We're going to encourage staff and students to stay home when they're sick. Proper hand hygiene, all of these things, and there's all these layers of mitigation strategies. And when you get into the verbiage that the CDC put out, you know, they say, well, if you're going to take away one strategy, make sure you at least have some other ones in place. But I think that that's going to be part of the conversation in our next two board meetings in August is what do we do? I do want to say that, you know, current wording under phase 3 says face coverings at the discretion of the individual per current CDC guidelines. Face coverings recommended for those not vaccinated. So we do have that in the language. We just have not made it a requirement. But certainly something to be thinking about as we move forward. I want to give you just a little bit of statistical data regarding the county. We have definitely seen an increase in the county over the last week. In a few days, I get a daily report on how many cases are in the county, and I was seeing for a long time 4, 3, 1, 7, and it's creeping up. Now we're into the 25, 26, 27 per day. We are leading the state. We have 126 active cases in the state right now. There are only 526 total. So we're a fourth of all the active cases in the state. We are averaging 12 daily new cases per 100,000. Our infection rate is a 1.03. Anything below 1 is good. Anything above 1 is not good because your rate of transmission, basically multiply whatever the average daily cases are, and that's how many more people are being infected. So if 12 people were tested positive today, they're infecting 12.36 more people. So keeping that in mind, our positivity rate is 11.8%. So out of every 100 tests, 11.8 people are testing positive. Our vaccination rate is at 39%. But they also classify our vulnerability level as being very low. So when you look at the state data, the highest rating right now is medium vulnerability level, then they have low, and then very low. So even with some of those things going on, vulnerability within our county is still low. I did ask Joe Russell for some data on school-age children. Since June 1st, there have been 45 cases of COVID for kids between the ages of 5 and 17 years old. 16 of those are currently active, and 22 of the 45 are under the age of 12. So almost half the school-age kids. And so some of the things that are coming into the conversation are things about the Delta variant, which has a higher transmission rate in younger kids than the other variants. And when I talked to Joe on Friday last week, there was one case of the Delta variant in Flathead County. Anyway, talking with Joe and talking with our healthcare providers, they're still recommending a wait and see. Let's see what the summer brings. Let's see what happens with our case counts. Let's see where things are headed. Right now, there's no like, yeah, you guys gotta, get the mask back on, the unvaccinated. Nothing like that is coming about. But I just wanted to give you an update on that and keep you thinking about that as we move into the fall.
Okay. Thanks, Micah. Last thing on the agenda is public comment. This is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that is not on the agenda. I will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comments, and these are comments, not questions, and the board will not engage in discussions at this time. The public is encouraged to contact board members by email, which is listed on the website. And I see a couple people in the audience who have been very patient.
Wow.
So thank you, but you got an education today too.
You can sit at the table right there and just
Yeah.
press the button.
But there is a sign-up sheet.
Sure.
We have to have your name and, favorite pizza flavor and all that good stuff there, so.
You can just put your name on the
Sure.
Thank you.
You want me to use this mic here?
Yes,
Sure.
yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, we've all been here 3 hours, so I hope you can bear with me for 3 minutes.
Okay.
So, my name is Brian Priest. I'm just a member of the community here. I live in Kalispell. And, I come representing, Friends of Jesus and Christians of the Flathead Valley. And we've come to offer up a prayer of blessing for school district number 5 and also for all the Flathead County schools and educational systems. Holy Father, we welcome you and Holy Spirit into the sphere of education which belongs to you. We honor you here. Let your shalom abide here. We ask for your favor and full blessing to settle permanently upon the educational sphere and personnel of this valley. All the school boards, administrators, staff, and students of all the schools, private and public, including homeschools, and surrounding Native American nations, and all county, federal, and state agencies which affect them. We ask you, God of our Master Jesus Christ, the God of glory, to make them intelligent and discerning in knowing you personally and intimately, their eyes focused and clear, so that they can see exactly what it is you are calling them to do, grasp the immensity of this glorious way of life that you have for your followers, and the utter extravagance of your work in us who trust you. Endless energy, boundless strength, unending love. We humbly pray for this area to be low before you, agreeing with you and saying yes to you in all things. Lift up your heads, you gates, be lifted up, you ancient doors, so that the King of glory may come in. We ask you to father these schools for a return to sound thinking and trust in you. Carry on to completion every single good intent that you have conceived regarding learning here. We invoke the blood of Jesus over them and ask for you to bring a catharsis of every dark and devious element. Bring deliverance, freedom, and healing from every burden, hindrance, defilement, and disability. Break the chains of educational injustice, of unjust laws, policies, and court rulings. Break poverty and release and establish generosity, your power, glory, spirit, wholeness of being, and wisdom. We pray for a complete spectrum of knowledge subjects in every area of life and human existence. Rebuild the deserted and neglected areas of knowledge. Bring love and correction and bless students to trust truth
and discard lies and misconceptions, to follow instructors who are trustworthy and eject professors and leadership who mislead them. Purge out every misleading and corrupt idea. May no deceivers enter or prosper here. Tenured teachers and administrators who carry your truth, holiness, your nature, voice, values, and wisdom. Creator and supreme teacher of all, we affirm self-evident truths, your creative hand, eternal, supernatural power, and divine headship. You reign supreme over every agenda and authority in education. We call forth schools, standards, methods, resources, teachers, and curriculum that acknowledge you and your truth, your word, and your works, for all of our people to be taught by you, for everyone to be trained in the way they should go and become just like the master teacher, Jesus Christ, for them to reach their identity, their full destiny, calling, giftings, and value. Place your shield of protection over our schools and homes from every violation and danger. Make their way successful, productive, and prosperous, to be an asset to the world. May your kingdom come.
Your time's up.
Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, I want you all to notice on your way out the door, the new lockers that are lining the hallway. They are beautiful. Yeah. So, is there
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Ursula. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Lance, I looked at
Meeting
that
adjourned.
paragraph, but I don't see anything fascinating in it.
In 2015, maybe it's the third or fourth one.
I know.
Come on now, I was waiting to let you do. Yeah, maybe it's number 4.
Right, like the song.
I'm sorry. The first couple just were a blur, Jack.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
I ignored the first paragraph.
You'll find the interesting part in there.
I didn't know if I needed these tonight.
Maybe.
Oh, that's what I came out with. Sorry. I think this. Hi, everybody.
Hello. That